right, and welcome back to our Spiciest Salsa Part 2 remix. Better than before. Back in black, back in action. We got all of your
Spicier?
favorite podcasters here. We got the Shaunosaur.
Hello.
We got the Sunless.
Yo,
We got the Hailnoxid.
he's not here.
Oh.
No.
We
Wait.
kind of.
Oh,
Oh, he's
Yeah.
back.
My mic?
Yeah,
My mic's not working now.
Oh.
we heard you.
that's rough. All right, but
Wait,
we also have the Zeus Fur.
What's up, mycokerewards.com? It's me, Zeus there.
What's up, LinkedIn profile? This is coming at you straight from what should be my resume working time, but it's not.
What's up, Jeff Bezos? This is your narrow stream of the day. All right. That's right. We are back, deciding once and for all the game of the year for not this year, because we're late, but we're still having fun anyway. So, as covered last time, let's take a look at the bracket. And y'all are gonna have to remind me of the names on these because, as I recall, they were very good. Our first round was The Ascent, a wonderful sci-fi, cyberpunk, more cyberpunk than cyberpunk shooter, versus Psychonauts 2. And did we come up with a name?
In the matchup we titled The Style Block.
Style Block, yes, because they had wonderful style. Psychonauts 2 took that round, followed by It Takes Two versus Outriders. Outriders once again being a just a wonderful suggestion that
First-person shooter, kind of
Good
like Destiny, but better, different ideas, a new, fresh of breath air.
A fresh breath air.
It's a fresh of breath air.
It's beautiful.
It Takes
Legend
Two
of Zelda.
being the
breath air.
being the wonderful co-op experience that it was, took that round out of pure uniqueness, and moves
In a
on.
matchup we called the Friends with Benefits round.
Yeah. Next round, Life is Strange 3, Call of the Wild. The confusing names round. No, it was
Home territory, surprisingly good story, not actually surprising.
yeah. Rounds.
No.
Life is Strange 1 through, with its indie band loveliness and unapologetic selfness.
And being from
followed-
Colorado.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, we
yeah.
like that.
Biased.
Finally, A Short Hike versus Earth Defense Force 5. And I'm going to call this one a Celebration of Earth.
And
round.
it was called, actually, Campy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It was really good.
They're
This is
both
really
campy
good.
in more ways than one.
Next time, we covered Outer Wilds, Psychonauts 2. Outer Wilds won out because it's wonderful, and I brought it. It Takes Two versus Potion Craft, which was probably one of the most painful rounds yet because Potion Craft was a dear to this group, but just was not there yet.
Yeah,
That's called the
it's
Wild.
also the game that literally won the Game Awards versus a game that still is not at all done at all.
Yep. And well, they went up against next year's winner of Game of the Year, Spiciest Salsa 2022. Now you are
speaking of
caught
which,
up.
Real
Oh,
quick,
go
just
ahead.
a break in. My vote is gotta be contractually obligated from last podcast for Dixon's non-entry of Baldur's Gate.
That's right. You did promise.
Yep, I swore
a
that I would
year-
do it, and this is
one
me doing it.
calendar year previously, that if Dixon brought Baldur's Gate,
I'm casting a
that-
write-in vote that's out of season, out of term for presidency.
yeah, I mean, one of these is going to be a surprise John Cena-like entrance with Baldur's Gate, and you will be taken. However, for now, we're back in it, and it's time for another round. And this round is Inscription versus Life is Strange 3, the winner from the previous round. Now, let me remind you all how this works. We have a quick poll if we're not sure. I don't know if we'll need it for this one because I think this is going to be a pretty exciting round. And then we have an explanation and for both games. Then we pitch both games, and then we make that decision. So I would like our wonderful friend Carbon Speed Dating to pitch Life is Strange 3 and remind us of why it won the previous round.
All right, yeah. So Life is Strange 3 is probably if I remember right, the newest game from the studio that did the other Life is Strange games, and it's essentially a choose your own adventure, story based game with strong LGBTQ representation and really sweet story. It takes place in Colorado. Uh, it is a really solid entry for not only just a game for the year, but also for the company itself. Like I feel like this is kind of them coming into their own in the storytelling for the kind of stories they're trying to be telling this entire time. Yeah, I believe it won last time, mostly just on the strength of the storytelling. Also, it doesn't hurt that it's a little bit more accessible, I think, than like a lot of the more niche genres because all you really need to get into it, rather than being like technically good at a game, is to just enjoy the story and a little bit of exploring around.
Yeah. We also had a lengthy discussion about the how it portrayed Colorado, and now that we've caught up a little bit in this group on trying to view a bit of Life is Strange 3, because a few of us weren't fully caught up on it, and we watched a playthrough, which unfortunately, due to the nightmare of the internet, had none of the music.
Oh,
So a few of the scenes
yeah.
uh,
I mean, like these
were a
were
little not as
Dystopianly
intended.
quiet.
Yeah,
They
like
were
the entire
very silly.
her entire like interest and hobby is music, and like one of the few locations in the game is a record shop, so that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, it was like a surrealist like theater art piece of her dancing around because all of the like technical foley work for all of the like sound effects for them, strumming on an air guitar or being like tapping on the floor, that was all still there.
Yep.
Yep. Also,
Yeah, I
I want to
remember-
Highlighted almost, if you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
also I want to mention real quick
Punctuated.
that last time I mentioned that Life is Strange was made in Colorado, though I fact checked that, and it's actually a French studio.
Oh, so they didn't know Colorado. That's
From
why
Paris.
they gave us a Virginia problem for when it comes to the environmental problem with the mountaintop mining operations. Because
I
as I
see.
mentioned in the previous one, that's not a thing in Colorado. At least not from anything I've looked up, and no one I've ever talked to here has ever mentioned anything like that. We have
Mhm.
plenty of other environmental problems, but that is not one of them. So it was a very kind of surreal take on Colorado.
That being said, the mountain town aesthetic, having just visited a town in the mountains of Colorado myself, was spot on,
Yes,
and the
agreed.
aesthetic is phenomenal.
Yeah, the aesthetic of the town in particular always struck me as a bit of a cross between Boulder and a little bit further out from us, out in Netherlands, which is just a small town, but like a very cute little outdoor mall complex, essentially.
It has
All
big
right,
Estes
so
Park vibes.
yeah. So, Carbon Speed Dating. Why do you think this should win Game of the Year 2022 once we're going up against Inscription?
Well, I mean, I also deeply love Inscription. I think in terms of
Not in this round, you don't. No,
oh,
that's
that's true. I'm just saying, like, I agree that it's probably a. I mean, it's got. There'll be more to say about Inscription in the comparison once you go over it a bit.
of
But I
course.
think if I were to feel like I have to, just say Life is Strange is better or Life is Strange is going to win it with some concept, I would say I really appreciated the strength of the storytelling, especially when it came to representation, since you don't like, especially video games have not the best history when it comes to representation in games, and it's nice to
Mm.
see a mainstream game that talks about LGBTQ stuff rather than it being exclusively like truly indie. Like the studio is somewhat indie, but it's a more well-known game franchise than a lot of the other ones that would try to normally cover these topics. So just in terms of that, I think it's a really important feature as part of video games in general. I think it's something
Yeah.
that a really strong strength that it brings to pushing the whole field forward in that way.
Sunless, is there a word or a term for not a full AAA studio
Not like
versus
kind of like
an
a
indie studio?
In between, we usually call them double A,
like
That
a
makes
better.
sense.
Mm,
because we're
makes
funny.
Yeah.
Or a single A studio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the studio itself is considered AAA, but I don't think it is. And I think
For
especially in
the
the kind of storytelling that they're doing, I would be pretty surprised. I should
for
double
Life
check.
is Strange is
Yeah.
studio. Don't
Yeah,
nod.
the Wikipedia says it's AA because of the price point.
Yeah,
It's
I
often a
see.
cheaper game than the other $60 titles.
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. I don't remember it being cheaper. I believe it was still $60, or because I bought it as pre-order. Like I got it because I was super excited about it, so I didn't feel like waiting. So I got it early. So it was a full-priced game, but it was a very long, fun experience, especially in terms of
Wonderful.
storytelling.
All right, which brings us to my first game that I'm bringing in this competition. And honestly, I'm going to have a lot of trouble if my picks come up against each other. But my game for this round is Inscription, the very indie game that has completely won me over. And first, I'll give a description of Inscription. And this is difficult, and let me explain why. Inscription thrives off of a set of gameplay elements that are so much more beautiful when you go into it blind, which makes it very difficult to talk about on a podcast like this, where we are, fighting these games against each other, Pokemon style. So it's like a Pokemon battle where you don't actually throw your Pokemon into the ring. You're just saying, trust me, it's a phenomenal Pokemon and it will beat your Bulbasaur. However, I'm going to do my best to describe at least the stuff that you see in trailers and such, and keep it spoiler free, while also giving my impression of it and why I think that it does deserve Game of the Year 2021. So, uh, Inscription has a wonderful art style that is very reminiscent of Myst, or original games when they were put out on what was the console that it's reminiscent of.
I mean, Myst was PC, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it
Yeah,
reminds me
it's
I always
very
of
played it on the
old
lots of.
PC.
PC or Mac 2 games.
Yeah, 3D though, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
floppy disks are part of it, so.
Yep. And when I say that it has this aesthetic, what I actually mean is it perfectly captures this aesthetic with the intent of making it very beautiful, seen from the current day. So it has this absolutely wonderful feeling while playing it, that you are glimpsing into this hidden past, and it implies a history with it. Which brings me to my next point about Inscription. Uh, the the wonder of Inscription is everything is not as it seems, and um, this game does things and has mechanics that I have never before seen in another video game before, and I'm surprised nobody has played with until now. But the most impressive part is that usually when you see a game with niche mechanics or something to show off, uh, the game suffers because of it, because they made the game around these mechanics. However, what Inscription has done is truly remarkable, because they have both made a magnificent game that would be good even without these, but added on these incredible moments that I will remember for a very long time, using these mechanics. So
Yeah, the card game is a really good card game just stand alone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I should mention in trailers, it is a card game where you have sort of a Slay the Spire-esque deck building aspect. But with my description on why it should win Game of the Year is follow the coordinates, find the tapes. Everything is not as it seems. And that is my summary of Inscription and my pitch for it. So
Yeah.
now let's talk about which one should win this round.
Can I say a couple things about Inscription? I think like I like what you said about it playing off of that genre extremely well, but I think like from a card game standpoint as well, like I've never seen a game so perfectly combine the genres of card game and horror. Uh
Yes.
and this game, because like usually card games don't really have very many kind of real seeming stakes, or the timing doesn't feel very real or very it's not very impactful. It doesn't really bring out the horror aspect of a game. But Inscription, uh I myself, the physical person sitting at the computer playing the game, felt like I was going to die if I messed up in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go one step further and say prior to that game, I wouldn't think that you could put those two genres together.
Well, has anyone here played Hand of Fate?
No, but it's on my list,
Yeah, I've
unfortunately.
seen trailers for it. It looked very similar, like the card mechanic. I didn't know very much about the actual game, though. Have you?
I mean, it's not just horror based. Caillou Bats it's one of his favorite games. It's one of the reasons I got Inscription for them as their birthday present. But I think that like that parallel is it's very strong in a conversation about Inscription at our besties event to kind of talk about where Inscription came from with Zuzfer's previous experience with Pony Island.
Mm.
Yeah. So when I originally watched Clever Diversion play Pony Island, I was very surprised at the energy that it brought. It was another one of these everything is not as it seems games where
Well,
the gameplay really seems to bleed over
isn't it from
into
the
the
same
player's
creator?
life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's
literally the
correct.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that Inscription really hammers home and really like phenomenally shows the skill of this developer when bringing the game over that threshold of being a video game and making it feel and bringing that world to you, the player, rather than having that separation between your world and the world of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a suitably spooky game as well. I was playing it around the Halloween, and it was very good for that type of time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
what do we want to do? A canvassing of votes?
I think we
Definitely.
should, just to see if either one needs a eulogy before we move on. So go ahead, Clever Diversion, ring it off.
All right. So for me, I have to pick Inscription here. Inscription was just such an important game for me. It made me like jump out of my seat, run around to like go get Zeusfer. like
Yeah.
like it was a very engaging, energetic social experience in the sense that I wanted to make every single one of my friends play it immediately the second that I played it.
I am in the same boat. Inscription for me has aspects that I'm still discovering. Just today, Shaunosaur told me about an entire aspect of the game that I didn't know about that brings me so much excitement. And right now, I just want to go back and play it again.
Yeah, it's one of those games where like when I finished it, I immediately texted everyone who told me to text them as soon as I finished it, which was several people, because it's one of those games you can't really talk about until you've finished, which is why it's difficult to talk about it here, but yes, it's very good. Yeah, so I think Inscription has my vote, but I guess a short personal eulogy for Life is Strange is that when I was watching the Let's Play of it, um, previous Life is Strange games seem to have like very, very fantasy, very sci-fi powers for their protagonist, but this one, her powers revolve around feeling other people's emotions and like reacting really strongly to them. And at first I was like, "Oh, that's a little weird. Doesn't everyone do that?" And I think I need to examine some things, and I think I really need to play this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was a great direction for them to go with emotional storytelling. I really love Life is Strange, and part of me is sad to see it go up against Inscription of this round, but I just feel like Inscription has it here.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I also would go with Inscription just because I loved how it opened up as the game went on. Like, it's a very engaging game in that way. Like, I would have been happy with it being what I had expected it to be, but as it keeps expanding, as it has all these wonderful mysteries that not only continue throughout the game, but like continue to be deeper and satisfyingly answered by the end of it, or at least by the end that I've gotten to. So I would also go with Inscription.
Noxid?
What do you? Yeah.
I would also go Inscription.
All right. I want to also give a quick eulogy for Life is Strange. One of the things that I really enjoyed that you said last time about this subject is Life is Strange does have some criticism or some, stereotypical things that it does. And the third one doesn't let that stop it from telling the story that it wants to tell. And I really appreciate that. A lot of studios could have pulled punches or changed rationales, but Life is Strange 3 really just came out with another wonderful game talking about another very good story. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games sort of pushing video game narrative forward, right? It's
Yes,
something that we really kind of desperately need in the industry is a higher standard of writing. Another example of
absolutely.
which we'll get to later, but
Agreed.
Yeah,
It's also not to say that Inscription doesn't have excellent writing, but it's not its focus.
Yeah.
Its
mhm.
focus is that gameplay mechanic and the story that they're telling in their own way, as opposed to Life is Strange, where I could argue you could sort of make that into a show and it would still maintain that high quality of writing.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps if I had seen a Let's Play that had any music whatsoever,
Yeah,
then I would have a more positive view.
it's a major like way that they demonstrate theme and emotion in it. So I know that like when you're playing, they even have an option that'll turn off copyrighted music for people that want to stream, but oh, that's it's not made for that.
No.
Well, that brings this round to a close with the winner as Inscription, the wonderful game that we can say nothing about. All right. Uh,
I
do
think
we
it's
want
6
to
now.
name thank you. Do we want to name the next round? It is a short hike versus Death Stranding. And I think we
Yes.
could call this
Yeah,
round
the take a hike
hike.
block. Take a hike
Yeah,
block.
it's there are hiking simulators.
These boots were made for walking.
That's also extremely good.
I like these boots are made for walking.
All
Mhm.
right, I'm gonna type that in really now. These boots were made for hiking.
For a hike.
These boots were made for chiral hiking.
Yes.
All right. In clever diversions, consistent attempts to break my heart and give me very hard decisions. Let's start this round with a short hike. So, Shaunasaur, would you kindly give us a summary of the game
Yeah.
and a cool
So,
pitch?
yes. So A Short Hike is an extremely it's an extremely whimsical game about being a teenager staying at essentially you're playing as this little bird. Her name is Claire, and she's staying with her aunt on this island, and she wants nothing more but to get cell service, which you can only get from the top of the mountain at the center of the island. And so she embarks on her quest, and the best thing about this game is that you almost immediately forget what your end goal is, and that's actually a plus because the message of this game is that stopping and smelling the roses essentially, and that the journey is so much more rewarding than the destination. And the way that it conveys this with its gameplay is extremely wonderful in that every tiny stone that you overturn in this game is an extremely wonderful little snippet that you would feel sad if you had just glossed over it. And I played this with several people, and every single time I played it through with someone else, they found something that I had missed, and which I was shocked by because this is a fairly short game. I played it in 2 hours. The other people I played it with took between 4 and 6 hours. And the entire time it's a game about losing yourself in the woods in the most whimsical and not creepy like Inscription way possible.
Yeah, I also really loved A Short Hike, and I found the writing to be like actually top tier. Like
The
the
writing
best,
is really, really good.
yeah, it's the best like expression of Generation Z culture that I've ever seen, and like just that like big amazing kid energy shines through in like every ounce of what this game has to offer. It's a bunch of really positive emotions and also great commentary about just like life and taking it easy and like how to view things and like also mental health.
Yeah.
It was a really helpful game for me in a like deeply personal way in relationships and especially relationships with family and society's expectations, and also just like how the different shades of youth culture are viewed by society, from about like 7-year-olds and the difference between that and a 14-year-old and that and a 17-year-old and that and like a 20-year-old, and the different shades of responsibility that are delineated to those groups by society. I found that to be a really insightful part of the writing.
Yeah. Another part about the writing, I recently gifted this game to a friend, and she texted me after having played a couple minutes of the game saying, "Hey, this little kid in this game is perfect and amazing, and I need to get him all of these seashells because this is my new goal in this game." And that's exactly what I wanted her to get out of it, and I'm so proud.
Yeah, this game has like one of the kids holds you hostage for seashells and is running a seashell racket.
It's so good.
Another kid is like really really like prideful about the rock climbing community, and he's like, no, it's not just a game, it's an international brotherhood of like-minded dedicated individuals. And
You
it's
don't
just
understand.
yeah, it's just so like perfectly childhood indignant.
Also, before this game goes up against Death Stranding, I want to note that it was made by one person, which is incredible. I did not know this until I was researching this game for this podcast. But it was made by one person, and the graphics are something that I've never seen before, where essentially they took 3D models and put a pixelated filter over top, so it looks like it's two-dimensional while also being rendered. It's very interesting. But yeah, it's a really sweet game.
I'm a huge fan of graphics adventures like this one. And I'm really glad that I'm living in a time period to see so many wonderful games really explore, either low poly or low resolution graphics rather than the realism that we were pushing for only so recently. I think simplicity in a canvas can make an experience or a story extremely clear, and I think a
Yeah.
short hike really exemplifies that.
Yeah, like it really pushes the nostalgia that it's going for to have that that very intentionally simplified graphics.
Yeah. All right. And with that explanation, I would like to personally be punched in the gut by Clever Diversion as he brings my what I'm sure will be a very difficult decision for me. So please, without further ado, describe Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding and tell us why it should win Game of the Year.
Yeah, so background for our viewers. Zeus played this game all year, was it? Almost like
Yeah.
That's right. I'm still
absolutely.
playing it.
Yeah, he's still playing it, and like I've never seen someone go as hard as Zeus went on this game in the first probably like 2 months. Is I would just like go away to be unemployed somewhere, and Zeus would come back and be like 5 times farther in the game and having stayed up all night, like just doing pizza deliveries back and forth to make this one person happy. And like the likes accumulation that exists in Death Stranding is something that we'll get into later. But
Yeah.
basically, as a canvas opening, Death Stranding is Hideo Kojima's first solo adventure after being kind of screwed over by his company after making arguably one of the world's best game series in Metal Gear Solid for that genre. And it's a banger. You know, it took a lot of interesting reviews when it first came out, but I think if you just give the game its own chance to like talk to you, you'll realize it's a very thoughtful art house piece that is very Kojima. If you've played a bunch of Metal Gear Solid, you'll know what that means. It features Norman Reedus as himself. It's a game
Yep,
where you
in
can
universe.
watch him pee and then use that pee to kill ghosts. So
10 out of 10 game.
10 out of
Magic.
10, easily the best game of the year. What Zeus is referring to is I often specifically design matchups to break his heart in this series. It's like my hobby. And I just like wait all year to like scheme and plan what that might be. And this one is taking the 2 games that he loves the most and then just making them fight. Or actually, we shouldn't get into that yet. We'll get into that next round.
Not quite yet.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, it's also a hiking game. Like, Death Stranding is about walking. It's a walking simulator with ghosts and terror and a lot of commentary about America and culture and isolation, which is extremely poignant in the COVID era, as well as terrorism and its effect on society and social psychology. It is.
Boy, the timing for Death
I
Stranding.
agree.
Yeah.
The
Oh my
timing.
God.
So, for those listening in the future, we are going into the 3rd year of the incredibly problematic time for the human species known as the COVID-19 pandemic, where our entire world has been, isolated and racked with
real
moral
quick,
decisions.
By isolated, we mean there's a government mandated stay at home for like 6 months where if you wanted to go outside for anything other than getting groceries, you needed a letter to show the police. I had one of those letters because I worked at the hospital, but it's government enforced stay at home restrictions, like home orders.
Yeah,
Yep.
and this game, do you know specifically when this game came out in 2020?
It was before
2019.
What?
Yep.
It was before this whole fiasco, planned completely separately, and still hitting so many relevant points of the human experience in this past 3 years.
Death Stranding released November 8th, 2019.
Dang.
Yep, so literally months before. So like 2 months before lockdown, or a little bit further, but still within the
Yeah.
Because Kojima is a prophet.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think it's a pretty human story that, humans are social creatures, and one of our biggest fears is social isolation, which, this game script kind of just drills into and inspects very, microscopically almost,
Yeah,
of
another
like what the effects of, socially being isolated would do to a society on a grand scale, right?
Yeah, and it's also about, giant golden hands coming up out of the ground and being afraid of that. And also delivering the
Really-
internet via babies to the West Coast, which still
Really-
needs to happen.
Really, really creepy monsters. Let's not forget that.
Another, perspective title for this round, I would submit also would be video games are art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think both of these really do kind of write a love letter to what the potential medium that video games can be in storytelling. And, I think the script of both Short Hike and Death Stranding are as, Clever was mentioning at the start of describing Death Stranding, it got a lot of mixed reviews because a lot of people didn't know what they were playing. Like, conceptually.
Yeah.
They didn't understand that he made it as an art piece to celebrate the medium, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
one of the main themes in both is using technology to gain access to very human emotions, right? So in A Short Hike, you get to the top of the mountain to get cell service. And in Death Stranding, your job is to hook everyone else up to the internet so they can
To provide
communicate.
cell service.
Yeah, to provide cell service, to provide free Wi-Fi, government-sponsored Wi-Fi.
Do you mind if I give my pitch for Death Stranding?
I
'Cause
was
have
just going to suggest it, in fact, because my voice hurts a lot.
excellent. Okay, so the reason why I think that Death Stranding should win the Game of the Year 2021 is because I have never seen such a beautiful execution of such a unique gameplay, message, and overall experience. And when I say message, I'm talking about the writing for most games tries to cover, a set of messages. They can be simple, like in Fallout, where they're like, "Wow, let's talk about war. It's weird and bad," to A Short Hike, where it talks about this wonderful journey and the experiences of childhood and the experiences of community. Death Stranding tries to tell the most unique story I have ever come across in a video game. The motifs that Kojima uses for this story are a very long list, which I have made. And I will go over those later. But the messages that this story is actually going into are very non-standard and very insightful messages. For instance, usually when social media is talked about these days, it's talked about, well, social media is bad and has these effects, or social media has these purposes. Kojima talks about social media with a standpoint that I've never seen before. In this game, there is no. This is a post-scarcity society because of small-scale manufacturing, a subject that is very dear to my heart and is central to my studies in graduate school. However, social media plays a gigantic part in this society that he has imagined in a very unique and positive way. Um, the isolation and the effects that this world has on people is just a wonderful piece of futurism and science fiction that is surprisingly protopia. I should mention protopia and contopia. I prefer these terms because there's very few times where you actually see a dystopia, meaning that everything is bad, and I would call a dystopia a contopia because there are more cons than pros. and vice versa, a protopia being one of these stories about a that would be like Star Trek, where most things are pretty positive, but there are, of course, bad things as well. I'm going to argue that Death Stranding is a wonderful protopia for humanity because there are very few people in this game that are actually detrimental to your experience, and the people who are have some very interesting reasons. Um, I am very thankful because protopian stories are very rare these days. So, Death Stranding has a unique message. It also has unique gameplay. A while ago on the internet, I saw quite a push for games that weren't purely shooters, who weren't purely going around and doing the regular things that game protagonists do. And this game does that perfectly. You are a courier, and the problems that you encounter are those that are unique to someone of this profession. And the gameplay elements that go around this are wonderfully thought out. And finally, the writing, it's Kojima. It's weird, and I love it. Um, and to really hammer that home, The Sunless got me a Christmas present this year, which was a manufactured prop from this game. It is the tape that is wrapped around all of the packages that you deliver. And when I say that this tape has so much attention to detail in the prop work and tells so much about the world, it's tape, but it has story ingrained in it. And that's the level of detail that every single object and every single event in this game has. Hideo Kojima has painted a wonderfully complete picture with such charisma that I can't help but fall in love with this game.
Yeah, and the fact that so in the post-scarcity society, the thing that people strive for is likes. And likes are your reward at the end of each mission. And at the beginning of the game, I remember kind of saying like, "Oh, ha ha ha," like, that's so funny that like we're getting all these likes. But then as the game goes on and you start to I should clarify, people can like the buildings that you make that are useful to them in the game. And every time they use those buildings, you get a like. So you start very quickly to kind of buy into this conceit of the narrative that your value and worth in this world is a social currency. It's how useful you are to other people and how much they appreciate that. And that meaning evolves and deepens as you play the game until you do start to develop a more than monetary relationship with what your job is, what your role is in life, who you are to other people, and who you can be as an artist. Like playing Death Stranding made me a better artist. It made me a better content creator. It made me a better person.
And when you say people, what you mean is other real players in this universe. Because one of the main aspects of Death Stranding, and I think one of its strongest motifs, is connection with other people. Now, you can connect with other players, but Hideo Kojima has made sure that you don't personally know any of them. These are random other players that are going through this world. And the effect that this has on the gameplay is very profound because you uh let me have an example of this. Um your buildings decay over a extended period of time. So if I build a bridge that I use often, I'll occasionally have to go back and put resources and effort into this bridge in order to keep it alive. Uh, However, you also see other players who have built bridges that you love and that you use every day. And one of the things that I do in this video game is I go around to structures that other players have built and that structures that we are all using, and I contribute my time and resources to these structures purely because I care about these other random people that I have never met, and I care about their experience and I care about their well being. This is a gameplay element that had a very real narrative story to it that shows me that exemplifies this motif of connection and caring about your community. And it's done through gameplay and not just by telling you that it exists. That's a truly beautiful game element.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of like Dark Souls and their online community, where there's almost this pride in within the community because at least in every experience I've had, um, they're kind of just these avatars. And everything's communicated through like physical motion, wiggling to the left and right and stuff to try to talk. And there's like the unique thing about like Dark Souls, and I would assume from this as well, kind of, is this zeitgeist kind of manifests. Like there are things that you do that's because it's like the polite thing to do. Clever can speak to this of like you bow before you start a duel in Dark Souls. I'm sure there's some element of like if you use a bridge, you throw a few resources into it.
Yeah, the
You know?
connection of online play and the creation of community is very intentional in both of these games, partly because of the messaging system and the ability for you to help other random players and create that sense of community, which I think Kojima is basing off of the backpacking community and the camaraderie and brotherhood that's created on the mountain, partly by his reference to cairns, as well as, just helpful signs or tips. The creation of your own kind of unique language is something that I've experienced by entering the motorcycling community. Is like everyone on a motorcycle is your friend now. And if they're in trouble on the side of the road, you have to stop. Like it is a social, cultural thing that you want to participate in. It's not enforced by anything, but once you're there, you feel that sense of pride and you feel that sense of ownership, and you do want to step up and be a human in this world. You want to help your fellow man. And that's something that Death Stranding hits as one of its main themes that I think is so important. And, I uh, I I think we should do the canvassing of votes because I also really want to just talk about Death Stranding independently forever. Like we could talk about the themes of chirality and hands and babies and death itself and what death and stranding both mean. I'll just say the quote at the beginning of the game, which is from a Japanese philosopher that I really appreciate. Everywhere on the planet, humanity will always bring two tools: the stick to keep away what it does not like, and the rope to bring close what it does.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Balder, why don't you kick us off with your vote for this round? As it stands, it can change.
I would go with Short Hike, because I love cute games.
Yeah.
One thing I've definitely learned is I really like fun games right now. That's where I'm at in life. And I love Death Stranding. I think it's got a lot of important things that it's saying. But there's a lot of that. There's a lot of heaviness in the world. And a Short Hike kind of helps me get away from that, and Death Stranding kind of like forces me to the mirror.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't need 100% this year.
Yeah,
Fair.
I'm kind of in a similar boat. Like, this one is also a very difficult vote for me because I think that Death Stranding came out at the perfect time for it to come out. And I really, really like both of these as game as art, but especially Death Stranding as for game as art in the current time. But I also agree that pretty much for the past 2 years, the only genre of music I've been able to listen to is lo-fi beats to chill and study to.
Yes.
Like, actually, that is the only music I have listened to in the past 2 years,
Oh my god.
which
Oh,
is
yeah.
why I love A Short Hike so much.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the lo-fi beats of video games.
Yes, and the soundtrack is actually also very good, so
Hmm.
What do you think, Carpet Speed Dating?
Personally, I mean, ever since the first trailer for Death Stranding, I have been super into it, and the game did not let down. I love the atmosphere. I was just commenting the other night when you were playing about how like gorgeous it is, like just objectively beautiful. I think my vote is going to go for Death Stranding for a lot of reasons. I feel like it has that atmosphere. I know it can be very oppressive, but I mean I thought
I
it
mean,
was excellently
it's
made. I
important.
thought it was.
it's
I
the
also
point.
yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
I also the monsters are a lot of fun. It's got a lot of fantastic actors in it. It's got Del Toro. It's got Mads Mikkelsen. It's a lot of fun, and even the weird parts of it are done with such honest enthusiasm that you can't help but like uh, get into it just as much as he did when he made it.
Yeah, I knew Carbon Speed Dating would pick the monster game.
Oh yeah, always. I'll pick. I mean, what I want from Telltale is to make them to make a monster game too. So
That'd be good.
yeah.
Yeah. Sunless, what do you think?
So, of these two, I've only played a little bit of Death Stranding, and that was way, way back. Um, and I had a good
We're
enough time with
watching.
it.
It inspired me, honestly.
Uh, that being said, I think I actually have to vote for A Short Hike here because of, well, they're both very good, and my go-to when I'm comparing games that are wildly, wildly different is to compare which one better uh better succeeds at its own stated goals. And both of these happen to ruin my argument because they both happen to succeed very, very well at their own stated goals. Because a short hike is discovery and lo-fi beats to game to, and a Death Stranding is put you in the mind of one Hideo Kojima as he goes about understanding the human condition and also how to be a delivery driver. Um, but the thing that it comes down to is of these two games, I can physically play a short hike because it's a 2-hour game. Death Stranding is 60 plus, and that's a long ass time. And it's like I can't help but think like that's a lot of games that I have to give up, right? It is
Yeah.
just a huge chunk of time that it is ripping out of my life. So all things being equal, I think I have to give it to the game I'm more likely to finish.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's like, I mean, if it's going, if the vote is going like I think it's going for Short Hike, we should start doing an elegy for Death Stranding. And one of the things for
Yeah,
Death Stranding is it didn't hook everyone right away. You know,
it's true.
like how Sunless was saying, he played it a little bit, right? But if you don't get that hook that makes you then go in your room and play it like all night for 3 days straight, Death Stranding can drop you in the first level very easily.
That's right.
And many
It
people
doesn't
did.
show off immediately.
And it's hidden, a lot of it. And a lot of it was, you know, in deep, deep menus that we're still navigating, which then become the game. I mean, one of the first criticisms that I found about it was that it's a menu simulator, not a walking simulator.
Hmm. Yeah.
Sure.
And it's one of the dangers of making one of your themes about important busy work, right? Because it's like, yeah, people need to deliver stuff, but it's a lot of stuff that feels exactly like every single quest in every RPG that everyone hates, which is go to point A, pick a mushroom, bring it back,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
as someone who now literally works in logistics, I can understand some people not wanting logistics in their video game. I literally work in shipping and receiving, and this game's whole focus is shipping and receiving, which does illuminate like how actually satisfying it can be. But I don't know if I have the motivation to play it as much now that I literally do it 8 hours a day.
In
I would like
defense of
to.
that, though, oh sorry.
Yeah,
In defense of that, though, I do think that artsy games that are about seemingly boring jobs, like Papers, Please or Death Stranding, are still really good games in the way that they gamify a job that would otherwise be boring. And I think since this game, like you were saying, is kind of, or seemingly, I haven't actually played very much of it, but includes lots of just going from point A to point B and managing your tasks along the way. Like, that's something that a lot of people really valued about, like, the original Wind Waker. Like, a lot of people really disliked that people took out the sailing element of Wind Waker. And some people found that to be extremely boring and hated it.
Oh,
And other people, that was the point of the game.
you mean the remake of Wind Waker?
Yes, the remake of Wind Waker.
Yeah,
Yes.
the remake of Wind Waker took out a lot of the quote unquote busy work of finding the shards of the Triforce. And many people complained that, like, hey, the game is about sailing, please let me sail.
Yeah, like, just because some people find it annoying doesn't mean that that element isn't, like, a very important and core element of the game.
Oh, of course not. I, didn't mean to communicate that idea at
Oh
all.
no, I didn't mean to be harsh. I just wanted to defend it a little as well.
Yeah, it's just at the edges of all these arguments are, like, the way it can be misinterpreted. And I mean, my vote, of course, is for Death Stranding. And I think we should round out the votes finally and check so that we can do an elegy for which one.
I mean,
Yeah.
Zeus?
My vote is also for Death Stranding.
Okay, since it seems that we are at a tie right here, and since I also am the representative of A Short Hike, I personally think it would be more fun to defend Death Stranding versus Inscription than it would to defend A Short Hike versus Inscription.
Let's see if I can swing people before we do charity votes for my favorite game.
Okay, I'm sorry.
As a personal favor, pity to Will. I
Yep,
change
yeah.
that now.
No, as most things go, because people pity me so much, let's try and hold off on that for a moment because I'd like to address Death Stranding's length. And I'd like to call us back to a time in our childhood. Some children exist today. Someone could be going through this today. And when I was a child, I did not have the opportunity to play many video games. And I'm not saying that I didn't play video games. I'm saying that I played a very narrow selection of games because my parents would only buy me a new video game very infrequently. So I needed games that really stood the test of time and I could play
if they were
on a
like our
regular
parents,
basis.
It didn't matter what the cost of those video games were. It was just one video game, no matter what the price.
That's right. And I am not a huge fan of the grind. The grind is one of the things that destroyed me in Warframe because I'm susceptible to that sort of thing. And a lot of people called Death Stranding grindy because it's long. However, I'd like to make a distinction because I don't think that Death Stranding has quite as much of a grind as everyone says. And I think that the deeper you get into the game, the more of these mechanics that you take for granted are manipulated in such a way that it keeps the game completely new the entire way through. A lot of people consider long games to be repetitive ones, and I would not call Death Stranding repetitive to the degree that I've seen a lot of other, JRPGs or certainly other games that this is compared to. I was consistently surprised by Death Stranding, and I was surprised last week by Death Stranding. And the amount of attention to detail given in each of these quests, even the smallest package, has a story behind it. You continue to deliver medication to the elder. You continue to deliver, unique watches to this other guy, and you get to know these characters based on what you bring them. And I think that the attention to detail saves the length. And if I were a child, and this was the only game that I got all year, I would be very pleased.
I would not
Yeah.
give any child Death Stranding.
I, as a child who had a kind of similar experience, like, I mean, I have over 400 hours in Animal Crossing. I can't judge anyone for playing a game a lot.
Yeah, the thing I'd like to say about Death Stranding in its advocacy is Death Stranding does the best job of any game I've ever seen by giving you the exact progression amount that you need to create that beautiful slope that I think is at the core of what the gaming experience is for the gamer. And Hideo Kojima has dialed that in so precisely and calibrated that in such a beautiful machine way that every second that I picked up Death Stranding again, I was like, oh my God, this is a new game. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're letting me do this. You know, and I don't know how much spoilers we want to go into in a very otherwise heavily spoiled, protected podcast, but like, there are things in Death Stranding that completely revolutionize your perspective on the map or the game itself. And Hideo Kojima knows exactly when to feed that drip to you. And I think that's at the heart of gaming in so many ways. The hard thing about this round is a short hike does that also. It's just with a new, adorable, amazing character. And hopefully we'll talk about Death's Door later, which very easily could have been on this list as well. And in fact is on many people's lists for game of this year. That also, you know, uses that charm and that like awe internet meme kind of quality of writing to great effect. And that's the thing is like my vote was actually wavering with Death Stranding as well. I was about to, I had half a mind to give votes to both because A Short Hike is a game, both these games I will remember for the rest of my life, which is what I use as a metric in making this podcast is which is the game that's most memorable, most impactful, and most, you know, capital I historical significance important. That's my training and the way that I see the world. And I think both of them hit it so well for A Short Hike. The thing is, like Death Stranding, I just like that its scope is so big. The themes that it's talking about are massive humanitarian ideas that if anyone follows my podcasts or listens to my stream know that I love so much is like the thing that Hideo Kojima is talking about is America as an identity group, as a collection of states which has been shattered and can be stitched back together. It's about what is that idea of nationalism for a country that doesn't have a nation. It is a collection of immigrants on a space. And that idea is, you know, video games don't normally hit that stuff that hard. Kind of Metal Gear Solid was trying to with Kojima's stuff, but like it was just so weird and wacky. Where Death Stranding is really him, you know, the clarion call of his maturity as an auteur.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd also like to mention too that the only thing about Death Stranding that I think is both in its favor and against is it is a game for people that play games. And if you play a lot of games, I mean, my God, this game is full of references to other games and other characters from other games and holograms of monsters from other games. It's he's it's a bit of a love letter to gaming in that way. And I think that especially if you're already part of that kind of community, you specifically would get a lot out of this game.
I think I should mention a couple of the things that Death Stranding does poorly. The amount of times that I've meant to say yes to a menu and it says, oh, careful, if you do this, you'll lose all your changes and go back, are every time I play.
Yeah. Or the fact that
the
it
UI
automatically makes you drop off all of your packages to the place they're not supposed to go for half of the reward.
Sometimes. Like I do feel the user interaction, you know, of Death Stranding, like it is done, you know, for a point and for gameplay reasons, but I don't think they hit quite as hard as talking about this in other ways in the game. And UI is a very, central point of video games for me, where that barrier between you, the player, and the character that you are trying to embody and have the experiences of, if that is too thick, then a game bounces off of me. And to be fair, I think it's a major point in Death Stranding's favor that something that I struggle so much with in games, I still stuck with, and is, I'm in spirit bringing it for Game of the Year. But it is a major point in its to its detriment, and I think that the experiences comes off as just a little bit clunky. I'm being swayed. Okay, I
I'm
should also
also
mention
being
I
swayed.
haven't
Well,
played
the thing is, so
Short Hike.
we've talked about in the post vote thing Death Stranding a lot. I think if this could be the last round for either of these games, I think we
Yeah.
should really focus on what A Short Hike has as its positives and negatives as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it's do you mind if I just say a short thing?
Oh, go for it.
To sort of compare the two again. A Short Hike, like all the descriptions of it, makes it sound like a game I want to play, and my motivation for playing Death Stranding is to finish Death Stranding, right? To have Death Stranding be over and done with, not necessarily the experience of actually playing it.
Which kind of works
And
very well to the theme of A Short Hike, which is that the purpose of the game is to play the game, not to finish the game. It's you're meant to get lost on your way up the mountain, finding seashells for children and helping people win track races and all sorts of other wild stuff. But sorry, go on.
oh no, I mean that's sort of where my thoughts end up landing. Is it's just like I look at Death Stranding as a 60+ hour. I would like to kind of read that as a book, you know?
Yeah, I want to put that under my belt to say I did it.
I
Yeah.
think a lot
So-
of games suffer from that, though. Like,
Mhm.
if you look at a game and you look at, if you look at most games as trying to get through them, and you haven't, gotten to the heart of it, then they can seem a lot like a slog.
To hop on Sunless's point, I feel like I have a similar feeling. Death Stranding is a game I would love to have experienced. A Short Hike is a game I am looking forward to experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I
Like-
want to have played and completed Death Stranding. I don't necessarily want the process that involves.
You don't want to start it up right now after this today.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I could totally see me, what, long week of work. I got home, I got my animals fed and walked. Let's boot up A Short Hike and just, get lost.
So, is anyone here have seen a lot of or has played a lot of Death Stranding, voting for A Short Hike here?
I mean,
And therein lies.
I have
Ooh,
I have
vicious,
watched
shots
a
fired.
lot. I have watched a lot of it, but I have not played Death Stranding.
Okay. Then yeah.
and
Okay.
I've played several hours.
I have enjoyed
Which is not
the
a lot,
game.
but-
Yeah, I've enjoyed the game immensely. As almost purposely at this point as a movie experience.
Sure.
Mhm.
It is a gorgeous story. It is a gorgeous video game visually, and I I'm captured by the story that's being told. But again, I watched that and I don't get the sense I want to do that.
I
And
think
keep in
this
mind, I've
is one
played
of the
7
things.
hours. So
Yeah,
mean,
you walked out of the starting area.
It's
right? And that's my
So-
point against Death Stranding is that I
Well-
played for 7.2 hours and I got out of the starting zone.
Well, it's
one
so
of
odd,
the
too.
things.
Right.
Go ahead, Carbon Speed Dating.
Oh, all right. Well, I was just gonna say the oddest thing is for the kind of game that it's being presented, it is surprisingly fun to watch as well. Like, it's not just a purely gamed experience. There are
Yeah.
plenty of games out there that are a lot of fun to play, that aren't necessarily that much fun to watch, and counterintuitively, the essentially walking sim that is Death Stranding is a very engaging kind of game in that way.
I would say from my experience and perspective, it's better enjoyed as a spectator.
Here's
Which also
where I
isn't wrong, like
wholeheartedly. Oh, go ahead.
oh sorry, which also isn't wrong because like we were mentioning earlier how more narrative story-driven games are kind of rare sometimes and are also extremely valid and extremely valuable uh,
I mean,
types of games.
so you know, Clever has mentioned. There's been several mentions of teetering. The most persuasive argument I heard was in favor of Death Stranding was from Clever. If you strictly look at these two games at which one's going to be remembered, it's Death Stranding. I don't think there's actually an argument against that.
Yeah, I agree as well.
It will be remembered.
Yeah,
A
the thing.
short hike, unfortunately, looks like a cute game and it looks very fun. It will be forgotten in like 6 years.
I also think that a short hike, in it being cute and fun, it also could have been made. I mean, it was actually made in 2020, even though Death Stranding is very 2020 for a game. A short
Yes.
hike could kind of be probably dropped anywhere within the past 5 years and have the same kind of impact, whereas Death Stranding specifically is very important for right now, more so than they knew while making it.
Yeah, at the risk of like reestablishing the stalemate, the thing is like a short hike may be forgotten by like society in general or like games journalists lists for about like the hot top 100 games ever. But like to me personally, I will remember a short hike for the rest of my life because, it got me to call my mom for the first time in like several years. Like the things that
Wow.
a short hike has to offer you are deeply personal and connected with family and relationships in ways that like, I still personally believe that Death Stranding should go on to the next round because I want to see Will defend it against Inscription, and it'll be hilarious for me personally.
I also want to see this.
And I'll remember that for the rest of my life.
For
But
content's sake, we all want to see
yeah,
that.
and this is the thing is like part of me is looking at the timer right now and we're at an hour and 12 minutes and I'm like we should hurry up.
Yeah,
But the
we've
other
been,
part
like,
of me is like this is exactly what this podcast is about, is a genuine tie well fought between two amazing games that are just simply different than each other. But again, they're both about experiencing life and what the journey is. Like I think that's something we have to remember about Death Stranding is like the things you learn in Death Stranding, the times when you like talk about the themes is in transit, and it gives you that time and it gives you that prompting with specific song choices from Low Roar, which is one of my favorite bands that I discovered completely because of Kojima and his like weird love of bringing a bunch of different artists and roping them into his projects, which, same as evidenced by all my friends right now on this podcast. But that's the thing is like they both are offering these deeper meanings and themes. I just prefer Death Stranding's combination of those personal meanings and themes with larger themes about government, society, isolation, and national identity. But that's because I love studying history all the time.
I do also want to bring up, bias a little bit, because of the experiences that people had IRL when playing certain games. Because I know that Zeus and Carbon and what are you going by?
Clever diversion.
Who?
Your name, Clever. Your name is the real one on the screen. Damn it. Uh, is that you played it all, you know, essentially co-op, right? It's like out
True.
and having
True.
fun,
As
having
like
fun with
it's a
friends.
group experience.
Yeah, and
And
yelling at Zeus which rocks to go to.
right, and you had a very entertaining social thing, which, as we all know and we'll bring up soon, co-op can make even a mediocre game significantly more entertaining. On the flip side, perhaps a lot of my negative stuff about Death Stranding is that I had some fairly nasty performance issues when I was trying to play Death
Same.
Stranding.
My computer wouldn't run it at the resolution that my computer is.
Yeah, and my computer was having notable frame rate hitches, which is a real bad time when you're dealing with sweeping vistas and you're trying to go and play, you listen to Low Roar's latest certified banger as you go over a hill and view this beautiful dock, except your video stream out to the living room is buffering for 5 seconds every 10 seconds, and it completely ruins the entire moment, which is what happened to me, and that's why I put the game down. And yeah, so I'm just gonna make the whole discussion way worse by by
No,
making
I
it
mean
so all the pro
Alright.
people
No, you
are
actually like
biased in
almost swayed
favor.
me back to Short Hike because my game wouldn't run it for like a week. And every time I start up that game, Kojima personally yells at me for having a bad computer.
Oh.
And
So
I'm
get
like,
it together.
I remember the feeling I had when I first saw that on Steam, and I was like, my face got a little red. I got like a little upset. I was like, this game is like dunking on me. This game is like dunking on me hard. Like, Kojima would actually prefer that you spend more money to experience his art. Thank you.
I think
Yeah, but
it's
Low
time for
Roar,
me
though.
to
God
give
damn.
a eulogy for Death Stranding.
I think we've given a
Um,
eulogy for both of
No,
these
I
games.
no,
think
no.
so, too.
Death Stranding has to
there
go
is
against
something-
Inscription. It'll be great for
Yeah.
the show. You have to think about the show work. The show work,
Like-
Will.
Like
there
I said
is-
when we went
there
into
is a few
our
points.
pitches for these,
No.
as the
For the
person who
sake of
brought a short hike
content.
to the table, like I feel like content wise and my personal and possibly in audience enjoyment wise, I would like to see Death Stranding go up against Inscription.
Uncle, you'd like to see me die inside. You'd like to
Yes.
see me experience a panic attack on the internet.
No,
I
but
want
maybe for the sake of
to.
time,
I
we
want
should.
to
What
cover
better place to
just a
panic,
couple
Will?
points. So I just want to cover a couple points that were mentioned. First of all, I think that Death Stranding is different when you're playing it, and the reason I say this is because the entire purpose and the entire wonder that video games bring as an art form is the things that it makes you care about. A
Mm.
book can tell you what other people care about. A movie can show you people caring about things very deeply. But video games, unless you are there and playing them, you don't quite experience the true majesty of what a video game can bring, which is getting you to care about things yourself, not as this character, not as this,
Getting your
this
ego wrapped up with
second-hand-
how many likes a bridge gets.
and the ways that you end up thinking and the ways that Hideo Kojima shows you this world can only be experienced when you are in it completely. And
nice
so
computer.
I think with a nice computer, that's very true.
For
And
80 hours.
that's why I don't stream it. That's why I don't show it to other people. Is because if you just pass by and glimpse this game, you don't see the player. You see a screenshot, a brief glimpse at what the player is doing, but you miss what the player is feeling. And I think that's for both of these games.
We're an
Um,
elitist.
Yeah, I think
But
that. Oh, sorry.
I really want to exemplify that for Death Stranding, and for anyone listening to this who's on the fence about playing it. There's the experience of Death Stranding can be different, and I'd love for you to see that.
I think most gamers who would listen to a gaming review podcast are probably screaming that we didn't pick Death Stranding by now.
I mean, going into this, I was like, all right, I'm gonna pitch a short hike and then give its eulogy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing I want to exactly avoid in this podcast also is these should be genuine, real fights. These shouldn't be,
Yeah.
these should be an actual debate that people come in willing to give both sides a fair shot. The thing that I want to avoid the most in this format is determining the matchups ahead of time. because the truth is I did actually forget about how poorly Death Stranding performed on my personal PC when I individually tried to play it until Sunless brought it up. And it stopped me from playing the game for like a week until I found a workaround.
Mhm.
So I am actually pretty convinced that I'm going to give a eulogy for Death Stranding right
Nope.
now because
Nope. In
Oh.
the honor of Low Roar, the great band, and for the purposes of content
oh wow.
and the thing, I'm giving half
Oh,
a vote to
don't
a
do this
short
to me.
hike.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
And it
god.
has
or
Conan
half a vote
O'Brien
to,
in it. Death
Death
Stranding
Stranding.
makes Conan O'Brien give you an otter hat. It's great.
Yeah,
That is
and
very
you get to run around the map and look for Del Toro and be chased by Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah. He's like,
Low
your
Roar-
BB needs to love you.
Yeah,
I'm making my next movie coming out later. You
God.
should see it.
I
Yeah.
was hoping this wouldn't happen.
I mean, Low Roar was
sorry,
like one of my
Zeus,
most
but-
listened songs.
It's for the
Or
content.
band that made a song
Think of the
Okay.
content.
for almost
Cool,
the
yeah.
entire year.
Well,
so I have to give it
Uh,
that.
with my death coming next, coming now is the winner of this cool jogging genre, Death Stranding. And one of my favorite conversations we've ever had on this podcast. So
Good.
yeah,
Yeah, honestly,
It's
like
also
that-
very surprising.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why we do this. It's because
Yeah.
we do actually.
I thought for sure, that was, like, oh, okay, it's gonna be Death Stranding. Like, obviously. And then
Obviously.
very good arguments were made on both sides.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I went and took the opportunity to buy a short hike while we were
Yeah,
talking about it.
same.
'Cause it's on sale right now.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
you should play it,
It's
dude.
some very
my-
Go
It's
on the coast and go to the
$5.
Speedboat Kid. The Speedboat Kid is the best.
no
Alright.
more spoilers now.
You know what?
Spoilers.
I'm going to go play a short hike as well. So thank you all.
Speaking of good arguments, we should transition to our next one, which is Outer Wilds versus It Takes Two. Cora, would you like to
God.
start off a refresher for this podcast of what It Takes Two is made of?
Yes. Yeah, so It Takes Two is a exclusively co-op experience with two different players, and you transition between different levels where you get different types of abilities. The best way I've found to describe it is, it's a co-op experience with a strong focus in the story on essentially fixing a broken relationship. It's an exceptionally sweet game, and I've recommended it to a number of people on the basis of being good for a date. So it's an exceptional game. It won Game of the Year back at the Game Awards. It was a lot of fun to play. It was a lot longer than I expected when I played it. I think it ended up being about probably something like 20 to 30 hours. So it's an absolutely wonderful game.
Astoundingly long, especially for how I imagine it, and I'm
Yeah,
very
no,
excited.
same. I expected
Uh,
it to be an evening game. It ended up being like the weekend at a little more.
Wow,
May I make a minor suggestion?
please.
Having played Outer Wilds, and Will is about to talk a lot next round, should I go ahead and do the summary and
Yes,
pitch for
please.
Outer
Please do.
Wilds?
That sounds great.
Because
Also,
I have
could
Yes.
we pull up the? I really liked these images that we did last round. I think it actually
yes.
contributed since I really like the visuals. I think it actually really contributed to our discussion. Could we pull those up
Agreed.
for these two games?
Yeah. But will have to wiggle each one of them as if they're talking whenever they're be talking about on a
God, I'm
stick
into
like a
that.
little puppet master. He'll have to put it up on strings like NSYNC.
I'm working on it. Go ahead. I will make this happen.
All right. Outer Wilds is a first-person puzzler. Basically, is the simplest way I can describe it. Not to get into the realm of any spoilers, really. But it is a game where you fly around in space in a adorable little spacecraft, solving mysteries and gathering information in order to do something important for the game, which I won't spoil. But it is a wonderful example of non-violent gameplay, where you don't have any real enemies outside of environments. You don't really have any uh, major combat sections or a gun or any of that sort of thing. The tone is really good. It's all very uh, sort of Wild West in a lot of ways. You can even see that in the image with the extremely tiny planet and a campfire. That whole mood is everywhere in the game. Um, you can fly in certain directions and hear the quiet twang of guitars floating over the, I would say airwaves, but you're in space, so space waves, ether. Um,
Base waves
or
confirmed. We've
Space
also
Space.
waves.
forgotten to name this round.
Oh,
Uh,
We'll figure it out later. I want to
Yeah.
keep
Excellent.
hearing you
How
talk
about
about
it
it.
takes
Yeah.
you?
I'd call it a space for discussion, but okay.
God,
Uh,
that's
I mean,
good.
that's really good. No, because It Takes Two is all about relationships and communication. So, agreed.
yeah.
I mean,
Ah.
Outer Wilds gets very into relationships as well later.
Mm-hmm. Well, then good. Yeah, it's all this wonderfully relaxed environment, except for when it isn't. So it really knows how to manage tone based on your environment and where you are in it. I had a fun little moment when I was trying to deal with something in the sun, near the sun. Um, and as you get close to the sun, all you end up hearing is its the roar of its fire. But farther away, you hear the beautiful acoustic guitar of the soundtrack, and so that was the guitarosphere that I always knew was a specific distance from the sun, and I used it to coordinate an orbit because I wanted to
Nice.
maintain my orbit in the guitarosphere because it's where I was safe.
That's hilarious.
Uh, um, yeah, and it is full of the kinds of puzzles that are really good in games, not like, you know, insidious and irritatingly hidden collectibles, but it's like go to a point of interest and there is a puzzle to solve there and get your info out of the thing and then move on to the next thing. Um,
Yeah, not
so
like
it keeps the
Resident Evil
pace
puzzles, which is matching up a chimera.
right. Or I wanted to call out like Doom 2016 with its extremely hidden uh bullshit, or like Serious Sam and whatnot, which are perfectly fun for their own things, but as its sole gameplay element, it really behooves Outer Wilds that it keeps the pace up, keeps you moving, keeps you thinking, and all with a lovely atmosphere. So yeah, that's Outer
Are we
Wilds.
in
Let me pitch.
discussion mode? Because I'm eager to jump on the puzzle part, because it is one of the most pleasantly surprising things.
Yeah.
Please.
Um, it is the first game I've played in quite some time that I felt like I was solving the puzzle, not seeing how the game developer designed it and then
Mm-hmm.
solving it, kind of backwards from there of like, oh, okay, so they made like a platform puzzle. Okay, so I need to go here. I was not considering that I was, completing a platforming puzzle. I was just doing it because that was like the next logical step, you know? It was just natural to do. And it's
Yeah.
just, you touched on it, and uh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasant part of it.
I really, really enjoy that take, and I agree completely. And I don't know if you had a similar experience with this, but when I started playing Outer Wilds, I didn't even know there was a puzzle, and I think that's what gives it that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what puzzle? You're just out there being a cowboy in space. Have fun. And you kind of have to figure out what's wrong and what's missing and piece it all together yourself without even anyone telling you there is a puzzle that needs solving.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Shauna
It
Store is
does.
also a true veteran of the Myst series from back in the day in the 90s. So,
Yes.
I love the puzzles. They're great.
yeah, good puzzle games often don't let you know it's a puzzle. They just think that you are exploring naturally your own ideas.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was also part of the prestige of it was they don't even have, like most games, where your objective is behind a locked door or an inaccessible. Like I was solving stuff just cause it's just like, I don't know, I want to go over that way now. Oh, I've got to go through here. Oh, okay, I've got to do this to do that. Cool. And you just like start working it out logically, and you don't even realize you're like the third room into a puzzle.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's one of
yeah,
the first games in a long time that really made me forget that it was a game, that it made me not see, like you said, it made me not see the
Wow.
developers, right?
right. I
Like,
didn't see the design in it, which in
Mhm.
itself is so. I mean, like I'm trying to think the last game I played where I genuinely kind of had a moment where I was like, "Oh right, like someone did this," But I'm already like an hour into exploring a planet that thought even comes to me.
Mhm.
I think how I'd summarize this is true discovery.
Yeah,
And I think it's something that I've sought after in many games, and some games that I've given this label to just out of sheer wanting it to be true. And Outer Wilds is one of the few games, maybe even the only game, that I truly felt like a true explorer. And I think that's one of the things that makes it the most beautiful game. And the reason that I want it to win Game of the Year 2021.
Also, quick side note, uh, I very much enjoy that all of the named aliens who we get to talk to, at least so far that I've met, are all non-binary, and I very much enjoy that.
And they're all
It's
named after
fantastic.
rocks.
Yeah, they're all named after rocks.
And Shauna worked at a rock shop for
They're-
a long time.
They're all non-binary rock aliens, and I love them so much.
I
Yeah.
But what did the
appreciate.
fourth eye do?
Yeah, that's so great.
That was my favorite
But
line.
here's the thing, like, so a lot of this is about like highly structured game space and the beauty and like energy generation that can come from feeling not controlled by the player. But in the time between last podcast and this one, me and Shaunasaur played It Takes Two, which is a very designed experience, but also showcases the joys of what a good controlled design is, because those co-op elements are very obvious to discover, in the sense that, like, oh, I know I'm supposed to do this to help that person, but they're mixed and matched in such like classic, almost Mario-esque video game ways that are, I don't know, it illuminates one of the joys of original gaming from like the early 90s when those techniques weren't being developed in the first place.
Yeah. I think when it comes down to it, if I had had a good, like, original showing of It Takes Two with a partner or close friend and experienced it all co-op, I'd probably be voting for it, but that's not how I experienced it. And so I have to vote for Outer Wilds. Right? Like,
I completely understand. And I just want to play the advocate of myself for a moment. And first of all, I haven't played It Takes Two. But the reason why I find it so valuable is I was trying to think of another game that's strictly co op that is beautifully made and tells an important story. Just an overall good game that is meant for co-op. And I'm like, oh yeah, like well there's no. Well there's Portal 2. No, that just had a co-op add-on. And then I realize I don't know the last time I've seen this phenomena. And that surprises me so greatly that it's very swinging towards It Takes Two for me. I don't know if I've seen a cooperative game on this scale be executed before. At least I can't think of one.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, the only other example is their previous game, which is A Way Out,
Ah,
which is the other. I mean, it's a purely co-op, as in requires another player
yeah,
co-op experience with a good story. Not quite as polished, I think, as It Takes Two, or nearly as conducive to new gamers, I think, as It Takes Two. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they're kind of the pioneers of this space, as far as I know.
I know that Zeus is playing Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, which is also pretty good.
that's
But
correct.
doesn't that also have a single player mode?
It is meant for two or more people. However, it does have kind of a tacked on single player mode, but it lacks the polish. It lacks the excitement of the release of It Takes Two. And I know I, for one, the next time that I want to get someone into gaming, be it someone I'm dating or someone who I care about the experience of their exposure to video games, I will be playing It Takes Two with them. That is not a question.
I think that's a good way of viewing the kind of experience it gives. Because in the same way I said with Death Stranding being a game for gamers, It Takes Two is perfect for people that maybe aren't as familiar with game mechanics, aren't as familiar with like the rich history that games can offer, and it's a great jumping in point.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I feel like because it requires two players, like it's not even an option to play it single player. I think that's both its strength and its weakness in that it gives it a more narrow audience. But like people have said, like it's so rare that a game does that, makes it only co-op.
Yeah, agreed. Also, the fact that the it's also just a brilliantly made co-op experience because at no point in the game can you fall too far behind if you're not experienced with games. Every
Mm-hmm.
single like the way the levels are designed, you're constantly keeping in within essentially eye contact with the other player. So it's very it doesn't feel like you're falling behind. It doesn't feel like if you're not familiar with a game, there's a very common feeling of it's not very fun to be the first person playing that game. Like that's not a good experience to have, which is why there's a lot of games out there where when people are really excited to show the games to people, they're like, "This is the best game," and they'll show them like Halo or something. Yes, Halo is a great game. It's not so much fun when the other person is doing all the fighting and you just die a lot. And It Takes
Mm-hmm.
Two is a perfect example of a game that I think would get people who are normally not as interested into games because purely cooperative, not really too many failure states outside of, like, some boss stuff. It's a very, chill experience in the sense of what it asks of you, but it's also complicated and a very competently made game in other regards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to like take this opportunity to really talk about what the experience of showing other people a video game is as a gamer, and also the kind of like vulnerable space of how best to play co-op with someone who, you know, isn't even necessarily less experienced than you, but just like what proper etiquette is for, I'd say, playing Halo with someone. Cuz like, you know, we just watched the girlfriend reviews of Halo Infinite, and you know, the boyfriend showcased some of the behaviors that I intentionally learned as a younger person not to do with other
Yep,
co-op people, which is
exactly,
charge ahead and fight everyone first, you know,
Yeah.
injure
and
your
just
other
kill them.
person or make them feel like ashamed about not being automatically amazing at this game that you happen to own. And I think that would be very good information, poignantly made in this round, to like really go over like what being a good game ambassador means when you're playing with someone else.
That's
I think
fantastic.
yeah,
I
agreed.
I've
I,
been introducing someone to video games who haven't played a whole lot before, and my introduction games were Potion Craft from a couple rounds ago, and now Outer Wilds. And I think that it's astounding that I the reasoning that I want to take with mentioning this is that when you're introducing video games to someone, you are inherently fighting a cultural zeitgeist of what the poor connotations of playing video games entails. And I think it's our moral responsibility to show the best that video games have to offer and their benefits when it comes to an artistic canvas. And I think that both of these games show, even if it's different parts of this, one of which is a beautiful social interaction that can only be had through this medium, and the other being a true story that they're excited to return to. Uh,
Yeah.
they're yeah. What do you think of that?
I would say, because I would suspect that I am the person here with the least amount of like keyboard time with games. Just in general, most of my experience comes with spending time with people who are playing games. So I still, I still have a large history of knowing games and experiencing them in that way. But I think one of the most important things when it comes to introducing to someone to games is to choose games that are cooperative. To be honest, as fun as single player games are, if you're not already excited to play games, it's not necessarily something you're going to do by yourself. So having the opportunity to spend time with someone that you care about, spending having a fun time with other people. Think of it in the same way that like party games are fun. I think that giving those positive associations with the other person and making that a shared experience, so it's not just I'm doing a game. It's no, I'm doing this fun activity with someone in the same way that I'd go on like a hike with them. So, especially when it comes to games, if I were to choose, I haven't played Outer Wilds yet. I'm looking forward to it immensely, but if I were to choose a game to introduce someone to, I would definitely start with a co-op, especially a
Mhm.
co-op like this that emphasizes staying together and making sure that both sides are equally uh, as powerful, I guess, like in the sense of there's no puzzle that only one person in this can solve. You can't let your friend fall behind. They can never feel like they're going to hold you back because you're part of the solution always.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, like speaking of good puzzle design with Outer Wilds, It Takes Two also has excellent puzzle design. In that the
Yes.
two characters are themselves the keys to most of the puzzles, so you can't just leave someone behind. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So in the same way, there are plenty of games that would be good to suggest to someone. Like if you know that they're really into, history. Like I remember, Clever, you showed me a couple of those like tank games or the submarine games or ship games. Like those might be something that someone who's really interested in, if you knew someone that was super into pilots, that super highly realistic, almost kind of insanely realistic flight simulator game would probably be a good way to introduce them to it.
Yeah,
But
DCS.
I would say then, yes, it's a great introduction as almost like a cultural piece, but I wouldn't just leave them to that because I mean, it's an overwhelming experience for someone that knows a game. So that's why I keep coming back to games that you can share rather than just saying, oh, you're into, like I said, history, that you like this history game. I think it can actually come around to being more, let me get you into games first, and then I'll show you something that you'll be, more into. There's
Yeah,
also games that I think are just easier to get into, things that have fewer mechanics.
I've
Hmm.
Any kind of shooting game I wouldn't necessarily recommend
I've found
because
that
it takes a lot of experience to be good at shooting on a keyboard or controller.
I found that like so much of it is the psychological aspect. Like what just to use an example recently is like um when the boyfriend was showing Halo to the girlfriend.
Yeah.
He's like, "This is the sword. It does a lunge. Let me show you." And he does the lunge to kill her, which
Yeah.
doesn't ever feel good.
Not to
So
mention
like
he didn't not to mention he didn't explain what the lunge was, so it was more just like, "Ha ha ha, this is a fun joke." Also, it's not gonna tell her how to use it.
exactly. So
On
like
a
I
practical
I
behalf.
think
It's
that
not
so
gonna it's like,
much
"Yes."
of like showing a video game is empowering them by being like, okay, you pick up the sword, now you do it to me and see how it is to actually
Plus
have the
plus
positive side of this
Absolutely.
Yeah.
interaction.
Plus, it'd
Hmm.
be more funny to kill your, in that case, your boyfriend who is much better at games. I think it would just be inherently funnier.
Yeah.
Like
Yes,
because the way I think about it is like, a joke is always funnier when you're punching up, not punching down. It's like, what
exactly.
exactly are you joking about when the more powerful gamer just kills the person who was probably going to die in this firefight in 10 seconds anyway?
And
Like, that's not. Like, I get what they were doing, like it was funny and cute, but like I don't know, that whole interaction I thought, which was not great, like, personally, like, that would not be a fun experience for me if I was trying to get into Halo, especially if I had asked someone to help me get into Halo.
Yeah.
Like,
And the
granted, they
thing
had
that
edited it to be humorous, but like I said, I wouldn't recommend that for like actually showing someone Halo.
right.
Yeah,
And
something I want to bring up about It Takes Two that Cora mentioned earlier is It Takes Two has a huge like selection of gameplay elements that it has in it. It's not just you and your one power and your partner and their one
Oh
power.
yeah.
It's every level has their own different powers, including like there's a bit of a shooting level and there's a bit of a like an extra platforming and like a more speedy kind of a bit lightly racing level and a
third person
significantly
hack
more
and
puzzle
slash
heavy
with the
level
hammer.
and a hack and slash level. And so if you're getting someone into games, you can turn to your playthrough of It Takes Two and be like, hey, which level did you like the best to play and why?
Oh,
Right?
smart.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
so true.
that would be great. So one of the other things I wanted to bring up about Outer Wilds is the other thing that I think is very important in my two-pronged approach to getting people into gaming is don't control them almost at all. Because so much
Yeah.
of the anxiety of what's sitting on the couch next to someone who's playing like your favorite game that you've ever played in your life is not completely controlling the experience and telling them every little thing to do that's the maximum optimum thing that they don't have any context to understand. And Outer Wilds does that the best in the sense that it lets people completely free. And so the best thing that you can say in Outer Wilds oftentimes is almost nothing.
I was
Mhm.
So I've been quiet on this subject, just kind of listening in. So the radically different. So Zeus introduced me to Outer Wilds. Got it for me for Christmas. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And I was streaming it in our chat here in our Discord, and Zeus popped in and was watching, and I asked a question. I was like, "Oh, what are these?" And Zeus's response was, "You know what? You should just find out. You should just play and discover it yourself." And at the time, I was like, "Okay, that's kind of maybe there's like a big twist or something, that comes up." And just the what we were just discussing before about Outer Wilds, the pure capture of like discovery in that game, it was so much more rewarding, and I instantly understood why Zeus chose to just be quiet and let me experience it with nothing coming into it.
Agreed.
Just like, and the instant it happened, I was like, oh, okay, I get it, yeah. And I think as I get older, my hang up, honestly, is It Takes Two requires two people, which means you have to know another person who is a gamer who
Have to
would
have
have
a
introduced
friend.
you to it. Right. But I mean, like, as I get older, like, I don't have someone, like, my girlfriend is like not a gamer to the point where even one that's like, oh, this would be really fun and stuff. She just doesn't enjoy games. She doesn't like the experience. And so, but more to the point, the people that it benefit, are people who are not typically a gamer. It still requires a gamer to try to
Mhm.
persuade you into it. Whereas Outer Wilds, you know, you could discover that yourself, right? You could come upon that if you just getting into video games and no one's really guiding you. You could go on Steam. Hey, this has really good reviews. This looks cool. I like space, and get it and play it. You can't do that with It Takes Two.
Yeah, and also a thing with Outer Wilds as some like coming from the perspective of someone who has been gaming their whole life, which honestly may have been a detriment to part of my enjoyment of the game, is that This game does things with controls that I've never seen a game do. It was described to me when I started playing it as like a physics engine with a really good story and puzzles.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and part of me is like, what do you mean I can't just jump by pressing A? I have to hold A and then boost with R bumper. And I was like, oh, it's counterintuitive to my brain sometimes because I've been gaming since before I could read. But in a way, that's really good because it gives me that kind of fresh experience where even though I've been gaming for a long time, I crash my ship into anything that moves, which is everything.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like there's no, or seemingly from my perspective, no amount of prior gaming experience readies you for the physics chaos that is Outer Wilds, but in the best way possible. And that's part of the fun is piloting a
Every
janky ship
crash
that's
is a
duct taped
story.
together.
Yeah.
Even the characters in the game talk about that. There's one character who keeps a tally of personal best non catastrophic crashes, and even the people in the game talk about how your ship is the best that they could convince the engineer to make it,
Yes.
which is brings me to the beautiful writing of this game. Even without this writing, it could have been a wonderful exploration experience. But the personal element of the characters bring it home in such an indescribably wonderful way that I remember the sacrifices, I remember the interactions, I remember the history of these people, and you grow to love them. And they're really supportive of each other, of you. It's a world that I want to live in.
It's a really supportive scientific community, which I think is
Mm.
extremely important for your protopia ideas about like
That's right.
the future needs to be good. We need to imagine the future good so that when we get there, it can be good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
I hate to be the time police here, but do we want to take it to a vote now?
I want to say one more thing for Outer Wilds.
Yes.
It's very quick. It is the best gameplay log journal thing that lets you come back to the game after you haven't played for 3 years that I have ever seen. Sometimes I forget something that's happening in the game, even though all these things are so memorable. And the ship's log reminds you exactly where you are, where you wanted to go the last time you stopped playing, and it's all effortless.
Rip.
You don't have to do a single thing to keep track because it keeps a wonderful running log of what you've experienced so far. And it's just the best implementation of this that I've ever seen. And I think the only one that's been effective for me so far.
It's also the greatest example of lumberpunk
Yes.
or lumbercore.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I do also wanted to bring up something to talk about the controls a little bit because uh like they're awkward and it's weird, but also there's so much room for mastery in there. Uh that while I was taking my roughly hour and a half to practice yeeting myself into the sun, um I got like so practiced and good at finessing the controls and using them. I could get, up into the ship, get the suit on, ship lift off, immediate, like fly a foot over the rim of the crater and yeet myself towards the sun within 15 seconds or so, and come into a nice stable orbit at the edge of the Guitaropause, uh, in record time just by, putting in the practice and literally becoming a better pilot.
I think you need to invent this as a new speed game category right now.
Oh, yeet yourself into
Yep.
Sunstrat.
Yeah.
You'll have
or
the
percentage.
fastest time in
thinking-
the Guitarosphere only run.
To someone who hasn't played this game, and you should, that is a very funny way to describe it. It's like I have the world record for yeeting myself into the sun that you'll ever see. I got so good.
So we should
And
do a vote.
also, same, yo.
Mhm.
Yeah,
My vote is for Outer Wilds.
Mine
Yeah.
as well.
my vote. Let me get this going here. Outer Wilds. That's 2 votes so far.
3.
3.
My vote is It Takes Two.
Okay. Balder?
Outer Wilds for me.
All right.
Very
And
nice.
I think it's 5-1.
All right. Outer Wilds takes this round. Do we have any last words for It Takes Two?
Even though it lost, it's fucking good. And if you can
It's
find
so
someone
Like
to play it with, do it. Do it.
It-
Do it. It's the
it-
best co-op experience you'll ever have. Do it.
it may be one of the most important pieces in our quiver as those of us who enjoy video games that we've ever come across.
it made me very happy to see this game's thumbnail covered in so many awards that you could barely make out what it was.
Yeah, so this is like the big pain point of this show also is like we have a long habit of taking the normal best game of the year that society says and then like trumping them with our just personal darling favorites. And it's not for lack of like quality at all because as I said, me and Shaunasaur played It Takes Two, enjoyed every second of it from beginning to like when we stopped at like the second level, I believe. Also, like really sharp writing in there about like actual relationship issues, as Carbon Speed Dating alluded to in our first part of the podcast. But also the art design is really like fun and snappy and like readable. I don't know. I hate to see it go. That's the thing about It Takes Two.
Yeah.
But Outer Wilds just
Agreed.
made such an impression on me that It Takes Two, I don't know. I guess it's one of the crimes of like I did play all of Outer Wilds and I didn't play all of It Takes Two.
Yes.
Which is just kind of a personal bias that I think I want to work really hard to overcome in the next year.
Also, you didn't. Neither of us have played all of Outer Wilds. There's a magnificent DLC that we're just getting into too.
Oh, that's right.
And it's good.
We should, in the next round, we'll talk about the DLC and the idea
agreed.
of having DLCs as entrances. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up. Oh, go ahead.
Can I take request a 1-minute pause? I need water.
Understood.
absolutely.
Let's take a good break, everyone. I can check in on the chat.
Yeah, we can
wow.
talk about something non-consequential in the interim.
Whoa, what's that?
Have any of us tried any new spicy salsa that we want to say is the new spiciest salsa of 2021?
I have one that's not spicy, but it's it's one that I
Then
enjoy and
too
I
bad.
came across it for funny reasons. So I like make stickers of my art and have been selling them online, and so I need to order large amounts of these stickers. And the sticker company that I've been printing my stickers with apparently makes hot sauce.
What?
Nice.
And if you order enough stickers, they will send you a free bottle of hot sauce.
Awesome.
So in the past couple of months, I've gotten 2 free bottles of hot sauce just from trying to run my own business. And it's actually pretty good, but I just think it's really funny that my sticker manufacturer is giving me free hot sauce.
That's great.
I want to make absolutely
want that
sure
business
that all of our
Right?
viewers can take a look at your beautiful art because I really like your art and I want to
Oh,
make
thank
sure
you.
everyone here can see it too. Where can we find it?
You can find my Instagram at Shaunasaur on Instagram.
I'd like to have a discussion with the
Hello,
members
yes, that is
of this. Ooh,
Thank you for plugging my art. I
Is that-
appreciate this.
is that a wood carving? Can you go
Yeah,
back up?
okay. The wood carving is not done by
Ooh.
me. A really cool
Okay.
person approached me and asked if he could make a wood carving of a design that I made. And so I'm super duper
So your
thrilled.
design's someone else's handwork.
Yes, yeah. He made the
Oh my
wood
God.
carving and I made the design. And yeah, so also plug to him as well. I think his account is linked on there as well. But
See
yes, it came out super cool.
Yeah, I'd very much like to get this group, all the members here. I know we played a one-shot while I was out there visiting last year.
Yes.
I would like to do, if for those that are interested, a like once a month campaign, something that's very light on commitment. I know we're all very busy people with full schedules, but to do something, I've got to get my creative juices out, and I
Yeah,
haven't
no.
been doing D&D in a long time, so I'm
D&D
itching
is
to
one of
get
the
back.
best places for that.
I know the emotion, and I want to say yes so badly. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
I
We'll
think
see if
we
we can make it
can
happen.
just like we should set a day like the podcast thing, but just for like who can show up on that day will be part of it, you know?
Yeah.
If you just set a hard day, I mean Fridays work best for us, I think.
Freeform D&D is also very good.
Yeah, like
Low Tad, best Tad.
a campaign that's basically a string of one shots with just
Yeah.
recurring characters.
Yeah,
All
totally.
right.
Are we ready?
I'm ready. Well, by that I mean, oh God, I'm not ready.
All right, so this one's probably pretty obvious. Do you want to just hold a poll right away?
Yeah, we could just phone
Yeah.
this one in, you know.
Yeah.
It's gonna be neat. I do need to leave. Drop the call in a bit being like 20 minutes.
I want to let you speak first then, because I want you to actually. So do we want to
No.
introduce you?
These are your darlings.
Oh
I'm
my
not
God.
gonna. Yeah, no. This is gonna be a lot of weight on you.
Well, and
This-
also 20 minutes will probably be this one discussion, which means that
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, we might
Yeah.
barely make it to honorable mentions for Dixon, so
All right.
we might want to move to honorable mentions now.
Let's do that. I like
Yeah.
that
Sort of
idea.
thing.
Yeah, maybe just Noxid's honorable mentions. How about that?
Sure.
I think we should start with Noxids and move through them. So let me do the honorable mentions intro that we do every time.
Every
That I know what I'm gonna do. That's funny.
It's
Uh,
tried and true. We've had it.
tried and true. I
We've had it peer
definitely,
reviewed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not drawing a blank of how to interact with this section right now. A clever diversion. Why don't you do our classic intro this time instead of me?
Okay. I literally don't know what you're talking about, but that's okay.
That's kind of the joke. Yeah, is
Yeah.
that we've never done this before.
That's cool.
And
That's cool.
I
So
can't.
this is the games that we are ashamed to bring as game of the year, but still love deeply in our hearts. This is the truest
Yes.
expression of nerddom.
That's an interesting perspective because over the course of this, these are the games I should have brought to the game.
I mean, I really love the games that you brought to the besties. Like that's the thing.
Sure,
like,
but I mean,
Outriders and
like-
Ascent are both worthy entrants, and I
Just-
wish that I wish they could all go further. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Big mood.
These are
Dixon,
not.
big mood.
These are not in the running. These are
Yeah.
not in the. Sorry, these are not in the running for Game of the Year, but we still like them and we wanted to mention them just so they feel included and so you know that we love them.
And let's keep these real short, guys.
Yeah,
Real
like a couple
short.
sentences top. Elevator pitches.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay,
Uh,
so I have a few that you guys probably just haven't heard of. So War Tales. War Tales is an isometric kind of. It's the best game I've seen that kind of has the bones for like a Dungeons and Dragons game, and that's including Baldur's Gate 3. This is literally a turn-based, like isometric. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
It doesn't have magic or anything like that. It's very, lo-fi. But you play as a band of mercenaries, and you hire new people on. There's character deaths. You have like party management. It's just like pretty. It seems like a game that's pretty surface level, and then actually has quite a bit of detail under it. It's just really fun. next is GTFO. I've played this with a few of the people in this chat, and this game does horror well, very well. Um,
Yes.
and the way I would describe it in an elevator pitch is it is a horror game that makes you whisper while you play it.
Nice.
For no reason. Like, it just makes you there, like, viscerally. And
Atmosphere.
yes, I think as a game, it still has a long way to go, but the developers are really cool. They have really cool ideas, and their Discord's super interactive, and they listen to feedback from their players. So I'm liking the direction it's going.
Impossible.
Yeah, Remnant from the Ashes is a fantastic kind of like Gears of War third-person shooter. Loot and shoot, kind of. I guess actually probably like Gears of War. It's just really, I mean, it's like dumb fun. But if you
Got
go
a tree
to
dragon in it.
Yeah, if you go to my Twitch, one of my favorite clips is me playing with one of my buddies when the tower shows up.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
and yeah, those who have played it know what that means. And I mean, it was just like one of those like jaw-dropping, like, oh my god kind of moments in a video game. I'm really glad I got it captured on video. And it's just really fun to play with a friend. Next up is Heartspace. So Heartspace Shipbreakers, you play as a shipbreaker, someone who tears apart spaceships in a junkyard. And through the course of it, it's kind of one of those like slowly unfolding storylines that just kind of flavors the video game and the world. And you realize that you're kind of, if any of you have, any of our viewers have seen Moon, you're kind of find out that you're a clone that's just perpetually in indentured servitude to this corpo that busts ships up. And yeah, it's just like dumb, fun, cool VR game, and I picked it up on a whim and really enjoyed it.
Oh, is it VR?
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, that's so cool. I might have to give that a shot then.
I watched some Let's Plays of that one. It seems really cool.
Yeah.
I watched Noxid play it, and it's great. Also has a great soundtrack, and also great commentary on working class rights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ghost Runner. Ghost Runner I got. Ghost Runner I for sure got for the soundtrack, which is a pretty big theme of how I pick out my games lately. It's banging. Who is it? It's someone deluxe. I can't recall off the top of my head, but Daniel Deluxe. Yeah, there you go. And picked it up, and man, is that story just kind of grips you right at it's pretty like surface level, but it just kind of adds to the atmosphere, and it's a speedrunner's delight, this game. It's made for speedrunning and just like moving at the pace of the music, and it's just super rewarding getting better at.
And more Cyberpunk Ninja.
Yeah. And then Haven. I picked up Haven because it looked like a kind of similar to It Takes Two. It is a very great representation. I guess in contrast of It Takes Two, because from what I heard, it's kind of touches on very real relationship. This is more of an idealistic view of a relationship, but you play as two lovers who run away from a galactic like empire that their societal rules made sure that they couldn't be together. They fell in love and ran away. And the story is them evading capture and being brought back. And it's really cute, really cool. The world and story and powers in it are very cool. Yeah, and it's just like a really fun time.
Also, side note for Haven, Shauna, you should listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah,
Excellent. Thank you.
Haven, yeah.
If you like
I sh-
lo-fi chill beats to read/study to, dang.
Yeah, so I picked this up again because of the soundtrack. Thank you for reminding me.
Very much
It's done by
like
Danger. It's done by Danger, who is a French DJ. Clever, I think I've shown you
Oh yeah,
him.
I love Danger.
Yeah,
Danger's
and
all of my names.
he made a banger of a soundtrack for that game, and that's me. Yeah.
Oh no, what's this?
Oh,
Okay, so this one's mine. To destroy the great mystery, to break the illusion. This is Clever Diversion's honorable mention. Century Age of Ash is a game where you finally get to play as a dragon that just happens to have a human on top of it all the time. But don't worry about that part of it. You're the dragon and you're going fast and doing dragon things. And I'm shocked continually that there aren't more games like this ever. That's all I want. If anyone is like watching me play The Isle for the past like year and a half straight, there should be more games where you get to do this.
around as dragons.
Yeah, it's a free-to-play model, which fits in very well with my long history of playing World of Tanks, World of Warships, and all these other things. And it's really fun. It's basically a helicopter simulator, as Sunless has pointed out, and I'm exceptionally good at it. I often get just like the win, like better than everyone else. So it feels great. Loop Hero is a game where you do the map, basically. It's a game that Zeusfer has gotten really addicted to for the past like 4 days straight and then hasn't played again. So yeah, but
Yep.
Loop Hero is picked up famously by that YouTuber that everyone loves, Northern Lion. It's interesting. It didn't hook me as much as Zeus did, but it made Zeus feel like it made me think that Zeus was like sucked into a time warp and then immediately became an expert within like a day. This next one is MechWarrior Online, which is a game that I always play. Just every year I come back to it. I spent money on it again this year because I was unemployed, as much of a paradox as that is. They also completely redid all their maps and launched a year-long campaign showing the community that they've completely rededicated to fixing many of the things that are wrong with the game, which is an amazing refresh thing because I think this game came out in like, 2012, 2011, and it's really refreshing to see like new leadership in the company come in. They redid all their maps. They redid lots of their perks. They redid lots of their mechs. And, that's what I want the most from an old game is to like them to just show their community they're still investing and to get their community to invest back in it. And it's done great for that game. It's been a huge success. The next one is Morrowind. Morrowind is the best RPG. Morrowind is a space that is better than all the other Elder Scrolls games that came after it because it's more old school PC gaming. It lies to you. It has characters in it that have a depth of writing and a perspective and philosophy of writing that is not seen in the other Elder Scrolls games. You actually have to use your brain. You actually have to remember with your quest journal where things are and follow in real life directions. You can't just point your nose at the nearest quest marker for Skyrim and walk towards there until you see a dragon. It's fantastic. It has so much depth and detail that the other games cut out. There are spears there are throwing stars, there are whole classes and skills of weapons and mysticism that just aren't in the other games. The next one is IL-2 Sturmovik, which is one of the best and most accessible modern flight sims for World War II that you could get your hands on. It's not as detailed and onerous as DCS, which means that you can get away with not buying $700 worth of HOTAS for it, but you still kind of do need track IR in order to really play the game, which is what's keeping me out of it right now. But they're also continually investing in that game. Just recently, they came out with the Skies Over Normandy, which is, for history nerds, extremely significant and important. I learn new history every time I pick up and play that game. Also, it's like my exact area of focus and what I want to make my profession out of. The next one is Subnautica. The other one is Planet Zoo. Planet Zoo is just really fun. I got into it for like a few months. I haven't played it since, but it's not for lack of trying. It's just because my grizzly bears glitched over the fence under the water and killed all of my sun bears, and that was horrible for me. So I got scarred. It was bad.
Don't you just love it when that
Yeah.
happens?
Planet Zoo is great because it features an actual marketplace online of animals, so that you can't get other animals or certain animals unless some other player puts them up. And it basically incentivizes this happy breeding program. I used to play the hell out of Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I never got into the Zoo series, but Shaunosaur has been kind enough to turn me onto it, and it's been really, really fun for about 3 months in the summer.
And it really makes you bare your heart.
So yeah, Subnautica.
No laughs.
Yeah, this is
That's
Sean.
all
I'm
right.
Sorry,
sorry.
I didn't hear. What was it?
I said it really makes you bare your heart.
They died. They had a child.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Shaunosaur will take the next honorable mentions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so Subnautica is a game that I picked up over the summer. Someone pitched it to me as a game where it is essentially astrobiology, but marine biology, and you get to build stuff, you get to explore stuff. It's another one, it's similar to Outer Wilds in that nothing is really explained to you. And the core focus of the game is exploring and discovering things about the astrobiology on this planet. Which, when that was described to me, I was shocked at how it had taken me so long to pick up this game. But yeah, absolutely wonderful. Also, it has a lot of pretty scary monsters in it. I played it a lot until I got the big submarine and had to go deeper, and then I just too many scary monsters, so I put it aside for a while because I'm a wimp. Anyway, I'll get there. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Sable.
Sable.
ah.
Yeah, Sable is a game that came out relatively recently, and so I haven't put more than a couple of hours into it, but it is a beautiful game. It reminds me of a combination of Breath of the Wild or Rime or Myst, mixed with also very much Journey as well, which I just listed like several of my top favorite games ever in that list, and so this one is a wonderful addition to that list. The animation looks like a comic book that I would read and essentially want to do fan art of this very, very deeply. Also, the characters are really beautiful. The story is really beautiful. Essentially, you play as a 16-year-old going on a soul-searching quest across a desert, and it's open world, and the whole thing was made by 2 people, which again, I cry at how people are this good at making games. Anyways, the next one is...
Hold on. I want to share some things about Sable.
Oh, yes.
I was also going to bring it, but then you put it in your list.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Sable has 2 things that I want to mention. In that, it has immaculate vibes. They're so good.
Mhm.
And B, some of the best descriptive writing I have seen in a video game, and like top 10 descriptive writing, period. Like if it was in a book, I would be like, wow, this is really, really good writing for this particular novel. I would love to read more of these person's descriptions of internal dialogue. But it's in a video game. So yeah, it's real
Yeah.
good.
It is stunning. I'm loving it so far. I don't want it to end. And next is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I put on here kind of as a joke, kind of not as a joke. It's a game that I'm surprised it's already been 5 years since it came out. Has it been 5 years or 4 years? It's been a shockingly long time.
So 2017?
Yes.
5 years.
Yeah. I think about this game every single year. It continues to be the new bar by which I rate all other games. This game, yeah, it changed gaming, at least for me, and it continues to be something that I replay every year and love watching people play every single year.
All right, Sunless, you're up.
Hell yeah. 3. Riftbreaker. Riftbreaker is a top-down game that is combination like build your own base simulator a la Satisfactory, or in some ways Minecraft, but with mods, and various other things where you collect resources and build power and build your own base. And it's also half anti-horde combat murder, where you are in a giant exosuit and you have a power sword and you sweep it through 300 enemy monsters all at the same time. And it's also half, yes, I know that's 1.5 games. It's also half tower defense, where you use your resources in your base to build a bunch of towers and defend against said alien hordes. So it's a really, really fun gameplay loop where you collect resources and go on excursions in your exosuit and build towers and jump around the map. And it keeps you interested and engaged the whole time. And it also talks about environmentalism, which is fun.
Nice.
Nice.
I'm working my hardest to get images here. It's kind of hard.
Yeah,
To keep talking about it,
No, I got it. Here we go.
okay, cool. That's Halo.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Nailed it. Destiny 2. Hey, you actually got one for the latest season. Destiny 2, I put on here because I play it every year, and I play it a lot every year because it keeps being fun. Some of the best shooting you can play, and they keep getting better at making content. Their recent dungeons have been phenomenal. The recent story work has been real good. Their turn with Savathun is exciting, and I am deeply, deeply anticipating the expansion, and it might make my list for this year, depending on how it goes over. But it is, uh, if you're into FPSs and don't mind a bit of the grind, it is a worthy investment of time. Next up, Horizon Zero Dawn. Yes, I know this came out in 2017, but I just got it on PC, so sue me. Um, it's an adventure game where you fight slash ride giant robot dinosaurs and explore a beautiful world and talk to characters, most of whom I actually like, and follow a storyline that legitimately had me guessing and wondering at what the next turn was and what the real cause of all the mystery is. And oh my god, did I mention the robot dinosaurs? They're way cool.
And
Like
very,
way,
very big. They do
Yeah.
scale excellent in this
And
game.
how are
they're
they to
so
fight?
big.
They seem terrifying.
They're so big and they're so cool and they're so scary. And some of them are like flaming lions that shoot fire at you. And Jesus Christ. And all I have is a bow. But yeah, it's super fun. And if you haven't picked it up because it was on PS4, it's on PC now. And it runs pretty good after they fixed it. Go play it. It's real good.
I'm really glad that you enjoy playing that game because I enjoy watching you play it. I don't think I could play it myself.
Is it all the giant robot crocodiles?
All right. Next up is carbon speed dating.
All right, yeah, no, for me, probably one of the games that I was most looking forward to this year, was that just came out was Road 96.
Nice.
It was basically marketed as an infinitely replayable, but not procedurally generated, really, story and choice game. Where it's a choice game, but like each time you're playing, it's going to be unique. So each person who plays it will have a unique experience. Seeing some of it being played, I don't quite agree with how the marketing like portrayed it. Think of it more like, you have a bunch of different Legos in a box that can both assemble a car, but one person gets a car that's like red and one person gets a car that's green, but it's still a car. So you can kind of see like the edges of that kind of uh, fragmented modular system they have in place. Not to say that it's not still a good game. It's still a really good game. It's got a very interesting kind of mechanic when it comes to how it's kind of roguelike. It's got a very interesting long-term story going on with a couple of characters you meet over and over again. And it's one of the, in my opinion, one of the most fun parts is just seeing how each character is interconnected in this world. There's a lot of funny interactions. There's a lot of oddly menacing things that happen as well, and it's I'll say that it surprised me in a good way. A lot of fun. I'm curious to see how it'll end, like the ending of the game. It's one of those games where I'm not entirely sure if they know how to end a game. Like it's the same way like if you watch a show or a movie and it's good, but is the ending going to make it lackluster? I'm curious to see how it's actually going to conclude because I'm a little worried it's going to be a little lackluster at the end. But overall, excellent game. And I like seeing these kind of games making just people making these kind of games more because they're exactly the sort of thing that I've been looking for. The other one is 12 Minutes. So 12 Minutes is a very strange game. I was so excited when I first saw this announced, just because I thought the setup was really interesting. Essentially, what it is you are this man who's currently on the ground being killed by that guy, but don't worry, it's fine because you're also stuck in a time loop. So every time you try to leave the apartment or you die, you reset the day or reset the last 12 minutes essentially. And it's a puzzle game, so you're like looking around to solve basically how to exit this time loop. In terms of story, it is a lot. I don't necessarily like where it went. The way I'd put it is the first 2 hours of this game are really, really good. And then it gets kind of weird. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to spoil it, but it gets a little odd in a not necessarily fun way. So I watch a lot of mystery stories. So once they revealed a couple of key details, I basically saw all the way through to the ending, and I didn't like the ending I saw. So it's slightly it redeems itself with a lot of the mechanics it has, and it's very interesting how organic it is. And it was very fun to feel like, oh, came up with something brilliant. I shall try this idea and then it works. But more often than not, I would be stuck for quite a bit of time. So I think I ended up spending 10 hours on this game. And I would argue that like 4 to 5 of those were me being stuck on literally the last clue. So
Kind of in the same boat.
yeah, so
I it was neat, and I liked the perspective. I liked the concept, but boy, did it not really deliver how I hoped
yeah,
it would.
it's got Willem Dafoe in it. He plays the hitman guy. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the game reacts to you in very interesting ways. So like it does feel like it's been very well thought out and very play tested in that kind of way. But in other ways, in my opinion, it has perhaps too many red herrings for a puzzle game. So there are entire mechanics that like when I got to the end, I'm like, oh, so that wasn't important at all. Wonderful. So, which isn't necessarily that much fun when you're stuck on a puzzle and you're like, well, when you realize looking back that there was no solution to that thing you spent an hour on. And I also
Really?
think,
Can I
yeah.
ask what that was? Because I couldn't find any red herrings.
Oh, I can name a few. I
Okay.
remember there were the big ones. I'm not going to spoil, but one of the big ones was if you look inside of vents, there's a vent in the bedroom that I thought was going to be important because you can put a candle in the vent and then it's lit up, and I was like, ha ha! I can connect the vents, and nope, that has nothing to do with anything. It's just
Okay.
there.
Yeah, interesting.
There was
I know
also
there was some stuff with the stove that I didn't play around with that
I
they showed in the trailer.
oh no,
Maybe
there I don't think
maybe there's
you can't
something with that.
I don't believe
Oh,
you can
can you
interact
not?
with the stove.
Okay.
I tried many times to interact with the stove and I don't. Yes, but
Okay,
if we're
I
getting
believe
into the
that.
nitty-gritty, there was a lot
Yeah,
of
okay.
and also one thing I will say in the game's favor was that uh it introduces like concepts that you're supposed to explore in a very creative way. So the character says something, you realize later that that was a hint of something you were supposed to do, and that was very satisfying in that same kind of organic way. I think really what let the story down was two things. One is the story after you get to a certain like uh point, you start to realize what the story they're telling is, and I did not like that particular story they chose. And the other was one that it's twofold when it comes to the relationship between the man and his wife, who's the other woman in that picture. Uh, and it's basically two issues. One, and they're both related to the time loop element, and I think that they could have handled this a little bit better, but it's also something kind of inherent. One is something kind of technical, which is it's a time loop story, and she always wants to talk to you because in her world, you just showed up at home. But as the player, you're basically create this disconnect between the character and the player, where the character really cares about this woman, and I don't because she's bothering me and she's getting in the way of my playthrough, and I only really have like 2 minutes of in real time to do this puzzle and you're getting in my way and you're stopping me, or you see me doing something I'm not supposed to do and you get mad at me and then it ruins the loop I'm in. So that's one reason. The other is that uh, last bit. The other is that um I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. It's got
Sorry.
That's all right. The other is just that oh, well, that's all right. It's like I said, a little bit too disconnected when it comes to the character, like how the character acts or thinks about things and how I as a player think or act about things. And it's just a little bit it just kind of ends up being a little more annoying than, like, you don't really grow the relationship with the wife as a result of the time loop. Instead, it just kind of comes back to, like, starting with having a potentially a positive experience, and it kind of becomes more annoying. Oh, and the other is just as a relationship, which this is, take it or leave it, but um, if you find out that your wife is lying to you for something at one point, it's very weird then to come back in the next loop and confront her about that, and then her just to lie straight to your face, which doesn't make you really care about somebody when you realize how easy it is for them to lie to you that carefully, which, take that for what it is. That could be an interesting storytelling device. I just don't think that that was their intention with that, so it comes off a little odd.
Fair.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. Next is me. Uh, and I'm bringing a couple games. The first of which is Far Cry New Dawn, which I know it's not the latest Far Cry, but the reason I'm bringing it is Far Cry continues to be one of the best co-op experiences with the Sunless that I've ever had, and this is just another one of those, and I like it, and I've enjoyed it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I'd enjoy it single player, but yeah, it's good.
It's fun co-op. That's what
It's fun
counts.
co-op. And the second of which is Here's the Storm, which is, somewhat divisive, but I have played more Heroes of the Storm this year than any other game, and I absolutely love it. It is the best MOBA that I've ever played, and I have a bit of hope with Microsoft purchasing the hodgepodge mess that Activision Blizzard has turned in. Maybe they'll show some support to my favorite game.
Yeah, we
But
can only
you know
hope.
what? Yeah, if it stays the same for the next several years, I'll keep playing it because I really do like it. And that wraps up our honorable mentions. Uh, I'm sad to say goodbye to Balder, but he would only bring me more pain in the next round. Thanks, honorable mentions. We may even see you again next year. But for now, we're going on to uh, the next fight, the next big, squabble between two of my favorite games, and one that will bring me oh so much pain. So, would someone else like to kick this off while I kick myself?
Nope, you can do it.
Oh God.
We believe in you, Zeus.
Okay, this is Inscription versus Death Stranding. We've talked, at length about Death
No,
Stranding when
quick,
it was going up against
before we start,
Short Hike. Oh, okay.
what is the round going to be called?
Oh, good point.
Mm.
Ooh,
Will's pain zone.
inner monsters
Sure.
and outer monsters.
Spook.
I mean, there's a card term called standing in poker or in blackjack, so I want to call it Death Standing.
Ah,
That's pretty good.
It's a bit of a
There's
stretch,
also-
but I think it'll work.
Yeah.
there's
If
also
you-
a hand in poker that's called, like, Dead Man's Hand.
Oh my God. Could
Yeah.
we call it like?
So I have
Death
another
Man's
thing.
Hand.
If you look at that screenshot, there are two cards that lined up, and it says Squirky.
There
And
you
I
go.
kinda
We
wanna
could
call
call
it
it Squirky.
Squirky.
I kind of want
This
to call it
Squirky.
Squirky.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Squirky.
Because it's like a
Squirky
deep
wins.
Can't
reference
compete with Squirky.
that,
Yeah.
that you have to be really like in the know to get, right? So like it ties into
Yeah.
Death Stranding.
It's like games are art question mark for this one.
Squirky.
Yeah. Save info. Wait, it's good. All right. With this name beautifully, beautifully portrayed in its new nomenclature, we get into a round that is very dear to my heart. I decided to bring Inscription as one of my Game of the Year choices, and I'd like to give a brief overview of what it's about, which is difficult, because this is one of those games that I wholeheartedly believe that you should play with as little knowledge of it as possible, because the experience of playing this game is truly wonderful. Much like Outer Wilds, it has a deep, beautiful amount of gameplay and has just this. It uses the modern craftsmanship of this new, beautiful art form to tell a story that I won't forget anytime soon. Um, I it does things that I have never seen any other game do and approach, and every other game that I've seen try, if even if I were to see a game try to approach these concepts, I would expect it to be a game centered around those concepts, almost a tech demo or a demonstration of this concept. However, Inscription, even without these things, is a beautifully fun and engaging game that brings all of these concepts home by, good storytelling and beautiful motifs. And fighting this is clever diversions, you know, uh, Pokemon in the ring, Death Stranding,
Nope. The
which we
joke's on
talked at
you,
length.
Will. Is Zeus? Is you have to do both. You have to do the
Oh
counter.
God,
You have to
Death
do the veil
Stranding.
where you like go behind the curtain and you're like, I know I'm someone else, and you come back out and you also do Death Stranding.
Oh my gosh, Death Stranding is my is the third game I brought for Game of the Year 2021. A beautiful true the true game by Hideo Kojima. No holds barred. No one in the writer room telling Kojima that's a little weird. No, none of that. No one said no to him, and this is what we got, and it is
For better
buck
or
wild and
worse.
beautiful. Death Stranding is, as you heard before, very dear to my heart. It has a narrative, and it has a narrative that I have legitimately never seen before, and it tries to tackle concepts that are truly unique, and it does it through incredibly creative and uh, just astounding motifs. Um, and with that summary of both of these games, uh, I am very curious to hear a general a pre-vote, we could call it. I want to know who is on whose
Yeah,
side
the
right
yays and
now.
nays of Parliament for
Yes.
Inscription or Death Stranding.
What do you think, Shaunasaur?
I I am on Team Inscription
Mm,
because although I agree that Death Stranding is a fantastic game and a work of art, even independently of being a game, Inscription puts art and game together seamlessly in a way that is integral to the media of gaming. Like,
yeah.
there are parts of this game that if it was just like a solitaire style, no flavor, no impending doom, no fearing for my actual human life of this actual person that I am. Uh, if this were just a game that I was playing with cards, would be very, very fun independently of this being an excellent horror game, an extremely immersive experience. And I've never seen that done before, and I want to replay it so bad, even though I just finished it the other day.
I'm in the same boat. Clever diversion. What do you technically brought Death Stranding, and I want to hear your take on this.
Yeah, mine's Death Stranding, and we'll talk about it after the vote.
Oh, okay, okay.
You
What
should
about you,
record. You
Sunless?
should put up the numbers.
Oh, of course, yes. Let's see. That was
Mm, one per.
one per. Okay.
Per. For Shauna and Clever. Um, Geez, let's see. So I think both games have their pluses, both games have their minuses. Both games are kind of, I don't know, dour in tone, even if they're messages may or may not be. Again, I haven't finished either of them, but I've played a good amount of both. Let's see. Neither of them are gameplay that I find myself particularly drawn to naturally. Right? I don't play a lot of card games. I don't play a lot of Death Strandings. Stranding games. What did he call that? It's a walking simulator.
I mean, you
Uh,
could. Death Stranding is the only entry in this type of game, I think.
right.
Yeah.
Kojima
It's the
games.
only true walking simulator to have been made.
Even says it on the title, a Hideo Kojima game.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
one
genre.
of those. It's a Kojima game.
Kojima.
But yeah, they're both very much doing themselves so very well in a number of ways. Jeez. I think I'm gonna have to give it to Inscription in this one.
You want to hold your vote off?
No, because I don't
Okay.
want to be the deciding factor and have that
Of
weighing on
course.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain. Like, I can't really put voice to why, but I think I do have to give it to Inscription, possibly for just like how much it goes hard into its own thing that it's doing.
Sure.
Okay, well you
Um,
can't you can't just say that and say that Death Stranding isn't doing that.
Actually, yeah. If your reasoning is that, I know nothing
Well, so here
more into
no,
its
no,
own
no, no, no,
self
let's
than Death
stop.
Stranding.
Because there's another thing that Sunless said.
Let me
Sure.
finish. Let me
Okay.
clarify what I mean by into its own thing.
Yeah.
Death Stranding has a bunch of things in there that are for Kojima because he thinks they're cool, not necessarily because they're serving Death Stranding as a video game.
Sure. Yeah.
Inscription, as far as I can tell so far, doesn't really have any of those. So it is more into its own thing
It's
as
a
a
very
game.
Yeah, it's a very what's the word? Like compact or consistent, I should say. That would probably be the word I would use for Inscription.
Mhm. I've come to value conciseness in a lot of ways, and I feel Inscription cuts out a lot of, or has previously cut out a lot of things that perhaps didn't need to be there.
All
Whereas
right.
Death Stranding maybe could have used an editor.
What about you, Carbon Speed Dating? What's your current vote?
I think my current vote is going to end up being Inscription, and I think it's not to say that it's not a close call, but I
Sure.
think it basically comes down to two things for me with the comparison. One is what game am I more likely to be excited about in when I'm done with it? Like, which game would I want to potentially play again? Which game would I be more interested in, sharing with somebody? Because I don't, for all the things that are great about Death Stranding, it is not a sharing game as easily. Not that it isn't a
Sure.
sharing game, but it is not a sharing game as easily as Inscription is. I also think that um, every element of Inscription plays beautifully within itself. So just the card game, like if that was the entire game was a card game with an interesting aesthetic choice, I would have been super interested in just that by itself. I thought that that part of the game was extremely strong, extremely engaging. For how simple the mechanics are, really, really well. You would think it would get boring, but it requires so much strategy, and it's never always that easy to figure out exactly what is the best strategy for. So it's very easy to realize that you've suddenly lost because, or and the rounds don't last very long because you can only take what is essentially like 4 hits, maybe 5 hits. So it's very easy to not only lose really quickly, but also win really quickly. So I had an entire round where I just won in 1 hit because I was able to overwhelm him very early.
Sure. Let's see. Does that just leave me?
I
Yep.
believe so.
Okay. So
But there are only 5 of us.
that's true. I am going to vote for Inscription this round. And before you torture me by saying how much I still want to buy all of the. I want to live the aesthetic of Death Stranding, and I have shirts. I have more merch from one of these games, and it's not the one I'm voting for. Before you say anything about that, I'm I'm gonna say it is my nightmare for someone to play a bit of Inscription and not actually see the whole game. Their Inscription goes so hard, and it took me a bit to get to the point where you start to glimpse deeper. And I have always dreamed about media doing this. I Man, that's hard to talk about. Um, there were moments in this game where I felt a grand discovery that I couldn't help but run and wake up Clever Diversion. There were moments in this game where Clever Diversion was like, what if you do this thing? Will it actually, I bet you the next time we see this thing, it'll be different. And I thought there was no way that the small indie developer could pull off this grand idea that my friend just had. But then they pulled it off in such a way that astounded me. There are the pure attention to detail and the sheer amount of discovery to be made still about this game makes me want to play it so much. I know that I don't know everything about this game yet, and being at the point that I am, that really excites me. I feel like, despite how much Death Stranding surprised me and showed me very interesting sides of itself, I feel like Inscription has that sheer amount of discovery and attention to detail, and that I like it a lot, and I want to show everyone.
Okay. Yeah. So I recognize that Death Stranding is outvoted, and that I am outvoted personally, but that's okay. Uh, the the thing that we said earlier, or that Sunless was so kind to bring up, is they both have their pros and cons. But I'm struggling to think of what a con for Inscription might be, which I'm sure we'll get into in the finals. But, I have to decide how much advocacy to lend to Death Stranding versus how much eulogy to lend to Death Stranding. Because I don't
That's a
want
good
it to
point.
go down without a fight. Because I think it has I think there's an element of recency bias. I think that there's an element of the quote unquote indie darling idea, which, is something that we can fight for or not fight for. Personally, I think Inscription is like certainly more significant game for this year. But if Death Stranding came out this year and Inscription came out this year, I would be curious as to which game journalists would really put Inscription over Death Stranding in this instance. Partly because like Death Stranding had that struggle, that rockiness in its initial inception, but also it had its director's cut is coming out pretty recently or in the future, and I again my siren song for Death Stranding is like, I think it's doing more important things, like capital I important, than Inscription is. But I also recognize that Inscription is just such a juggernaut this year, and it's like sweeping the top lists of almost every game journalist's location that we're familiar with, certainly Polygon's.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to talk about Death Stranding's director's cut, because it introduces something that I found quite appalling. It introduces what sounds like a thing that allows you to skip the game and
man
skip all of
cannons.
the gameplay. The gameplay is this. Well, you know that I've always dreamed of games that make you take situations seriously, That was one of the reasons I loved PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Was it was the first game that made me feel tense in tactical situations. It made me really value my time and my coordination with all of you when you played it with me. And Death Stranding, allowed me to live that, but for planning out routes and doing stuff that wasn't shooting. And I value that a lot. And by the sound of it, this new addition to the game might just bring that sizable experience for the gameplay for me just down to zero. And I disagree with that. It's a very, should Dark Souls have an easy mode argument, because one of the great things about Dark Souls is it tells some of its story through the things it makes you feel by making the gameplay exactly what it is. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that video games can do. Is they're not a movie. They're not a book. They use their gameplay, they use their difficulty or their the choices that they make you, the player, make to tell a story. And I find it appalling that a lot of people won't get that experience, won't get the importance of these events by ridding themselves as one of the major storytelling elements.
Yeah, I think also like a name for this round could also be like gamer anxiety, which is both of these games have this feeling that if I show this to someone and they don't play it all the way through, they'll miss it and they'll think I'm
Yes.
stupid for liking it. And that fear was kind of what I was getting at a little bit earlier with the co-op idea, which is, so much of the games that are left at the end of our besties are games that are like we care a lot about and we want to show other people, but that's an inherently vulnerable, like emotional position, because if they just played like the first hour and then never played again, they won't get the art, which like causes us some like secondhand anxiety, or like, oh no, like, it's like having someone skip the best scene of a movie that's like your favorite movie, right? The meme online that's like, look, it's the best part of the movie, and they're looking at their phone. It's like
Yes.
the replacement for Sisyphus's torture isn't having his liver pecked out by an eagle. It's watching your favorite Netflix show with an eagle who doesn't care. So like that's so much of what these last rounds are for us. And I feel that way very strongly about Death Stranding. The things that, draw me to vote for Death Stranding at the end for its eulogy and its totality completion is that I think that Death Stranding has in some ways like an important impact on people's life and their like overall perspective, which is a argument I will rhyme with in the next round, I'm sure. But
Yes.
Inscription can like challenge you as a gamer and like make you revolutionize your understanding of games as a medium, and that's nice. But like Death Stranding is touching on major themes of life and humanity, whereas Inscription is like not quite doing that same thing. And also like I do want to. I am curious about what Sunless's take on what the negatives of Inscription might be. But for me, like parts of the choices at the end of Inscription, I disagreed with. Parts of the choices in we referenced the film earlier. I found to be a little bit amateurish in its writing at the end. You know what I mean? The choices gameplay wise, I completely agree with, that are amazing and revolutionary and, left me wanting more. But some of the actual writing, like the physical words, I found to be a little bit not satisfying to me. But, then again, we haven't seen the end of Death Stranding because it's so long. So maybe that's a second, problem that Death Stranding has. I don't want to go too long on it.
I'm also trying to 100% it, and I'm I'm kind of wavering on that a little bit because there's this one Republican dude who doesn't want to do the thing that I want to do,
Yeah,
and convincing them is,
it's
ugh,
it's hard
Do you
to.
think that is his vision of the writing though, that you can't
that's a great
100%
point.
it? Like I worry about that kind of stuff because he is the kind of writer that would have included a character to completely screw over people that want to 100% the game.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
he's the writer that made you switch your controller from controller port 2 when you were fighting
Ugh.
Psycho Mantis. So just keep that in mind.
Um, I think that Death Stranding is trying and somewhat succeeding to talk about the human condition and to make very poignant points about humanity as a whole, whereas Inscription is making a very good story that talks about video games in a new way, um, and uh, does it very well. And it does really ask into question what we should vote for, because one of them is doing its darndest to push video games forward as art in a very obvious and a very showy way, Death Stranding, and
Well,
one of them is something that could escape the eye, but is genuinely an incredible story.
and like
Uh,
the thing that I
yeah.
want to say about Inscription before Death Stranding, like before this round ends, is like my hot take on Inscription is that without spoilers, it's an okay-ish story that's just presented really well. If that makes any sense. Like the
No,
actual
I think
things that are
I think
happening in
yeah.
Inscription, I kind of saw coming a bit earlier than I'd like to have. I just think that the way it's revealed to us is revolutionary.
Yeah, I
I
feel like
see.
oftentimes games kind of end up doing that. Like, I would never necessarily say this is a discussion we had previously, which is this idea of like the idea that a good game or a good story in a game is different than a good story. So like there are plenty of great movies out there that are just great, but like the bar we have for video game stories is very different. And I think potentially like to be honest, kind of low. Like there are so many great quote unquote great stories that people talk about in games, and then you actually see it. And I always feel a little bad when I feel like I saw the entire ending coming, like really far. Like I remember, not to be too negative, but earlier, Sunless, when you were mentioning Horizon, I felt so bad because I figured out the entire plot of that game in the first 15 minutes. Like, there was one cutscene, and I'm like, "Oh, that's what's happening," and I
Oh
figured out the
yeah.
whole thing, and I was like, "Okay, so now, 60 hours for the game to slowly reveal the thing I already knew," and I think that's just because my expectations are coming from TV, coming from movies,
Mhm.
uh, which already struggle to be surprising, let alone being surprising in a game where you have to present the story in a very condensed way, usually through cutscenes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that like parts of the story of Inscription could certainly have been written better, but also the bulk of the story is kind of like it's not even well, this is I don't think this is spoilers. A lot of the story is uh hidden behind puzzles. And you have to like excavate this story through the game. But I think the game itself is like uh Zeus, when you were saying, oh yeah, one of these games is like an art piece on the nature of gaming, I was like, yeah, Inscription. And then you said Death Stranding, and I was like, whoa, hang on.
Yeah. Well,
It's
that's the
like
thing about this
Death,
round.
yeah, like
Yeah,
the
they're
thing with
both.
Inscription, like I think a good way of describing Inscription without giving direct spoilers, but describing the energy of Inscription and the things that it makes you think about is if you've played Undertale, Inscription makes you think in similar-ish ways. I don't know if that's a terribly good example, but it's like what makes this game art to me is that it makes you rethink gaming and like even just looking at the little wooden figures that represent the character going through this almost Dungeons and Dragons-esque campaign that the villain across the table has set out for you, you encounter these little wooden figures later, and you have to stop and think, like, hang on, what are these? Are these people? Are they wooden figures? Where is the line between anything in this game?
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
agree. And I think we should move on. I just wanted to, like, give
Yeah.
Death Stranding some amount of fighting chance against this round. But, like, we will talk about description later.
That makes sense. Yeah. I also want to dunk on Death Stranding for a moment. The story, the amount that they're currently saying extinction in the part of, like, they really try to hammer home concepts as if they haven't said them so many times already. It it can
Yeah.
get kind of rough. Hideo Kojima is really proud of his stuff and he wants to tell me about it, but at some point, like, yeah, Kojima, I get it.
Well, I wonder if that hits different in different languages because, like,
Oh, I
the
see.
amount of names that he has that are 2 words combined, I think works better in Japanese. Heart Man, Death Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
those are probably literally translated.
The sheer amount of things in Hideo Kojima games that are just like, I thought this concept was cool and I wanted to put it in the game without it directly contributing to and him kind of haphazardly trying to find a way to fit it into the story kind of take me a little bit out of it. Yeah, but overall, I like when it comes down to it, I desperately want everyone to play Inscription because it's very important for me to discuss it with my friends because I think it is a monumental achievement for gaming in general. And I kind of feel the same about Death Stranding. I like it because it's cool art and it shows people that video games don't always have to be about Call of Duty. But honestly, I could live with people not playing it. Inscription, on the other hand, it's very important to me, and that's why I'm voting for it.
Okay,
Everyone's
so
still with
moving
their
on.
votes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Inscription wins this round 4-1 and brings us to the final round.
The actual
Uh,
heartbreak round.
Yep. Now we pit 2 games against each other, and I, with some jubilation and a lot of pain, say that they are both my entrants. Uh, I have brought 2 games that I care very much about, and now I get to fight against myself in the Game of the
Yeah,
Year
we'll spare you the
2021.
descriptions for this one.
Please do. Will someone else take it from here so I can rest my weary my weary sadness?
Honestly, I don't think we need to do any descriptions for anything. We've been talking about these games for the past 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
just
I think
get
we can
into
move
it.
right down into defending them.
Do we want to
Okay.
canvass it first?
Yeah, I
Ooh,
think so.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds good to me.
I don't think I can, honestly.
Okay,
Yeah,
undecided. I'm going
yeah.
for Outer Wilds.
I am also going for Outer Wilds.
I'm gonna go for Inscription. Honestly, mostly because the nature of it means that without having played it and without wanting to talk about it, it's hard for me to uh, be as enthusiastic about it.
I'm going to go for Inscription because I really want to make sure everyone here wait, Carbon Speed Dating.
It's
Which one
2
did
and
you go
2.
for?
Inscription.
Inscription.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 and 2. Okay, I'm let's see. Yeah.
Now you guys have put me in a tight spot.
We're going to be swapping a lot. I know I will be a lot anyway.
Yeah, because, like, my reasoning for holding off was also same as Carbon Speed Dating's. thing, which is I haven't played as much of Outer Wilds as I have Inscription, and so I feel like I don't have the heart reaction to it that I would perhaps if I had finished it. And whereas Inscription, since it's still very fresh in my mind, and it also I think is just a very impactful and very important art piece as a game, um, has a big resonance with me. But I also want to give Outer Wilds a chance. I also worry a little bit about giving Inscription the Homestuck effect, which is what I like to call when you hype something so much that it stops being good.
Sure.
Or that new people to the medium will expect it to be an 11 out of 10 when actually it can only be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
there
Should
is that
I
danger.
Yeah.
I think it is time for me to do the negative bit so that people can have that when they talk
Sure.
about things and why I voted for Outer Wilds instead of Inscription. Um, it's partly, I think, because I played Inscription wrong. Um, and also partly because perhaps Inscription helped me play it wrong. And Outer Wilds, like we said uh with Dixon, effortlessly and instantly took me into the what I feel is the correct mindset for playing Outer Wilds. Inscription, for me, I went in with the knowledge that I should expect nothing, right? Don't go in with preconceived notions, don't go in uh like knowing about it, don't do any of that. And so I went in not expecting anything, which I think was the wrong choice. Hearing people talk about Inscription, hearing people rave about what they loved about it makes me realize I should have gone in with expectations
Interesting.
that then could have been subverted, right? That could
Oh,
have been
wow, that's an
overturned.
interesting idea.
Yeah.
I went into it eyes wide, blank stare, give me the game, let the game flow into my eyes and let me experience it. And so I essentially put myself next to the position of being surprised and so couldn't be surprised, right? I surprise because I wasn't expecting anything. Whatever happened was what was going to happen.
Mm.
Um and so I feel like it deadened the experience for me, I think.
Yeah.
And in another way, right, talking about, oh, this has so many secrets and this has so many details and it's like, oh, if you really pay attention to the little wooden figurines, they come up later. And I haven't run into the come up later part. Um, but without essentially being primed that there's a ton of really cool secrets really deep in the game and you got to pay attention to all the details, that wasn't like there was no real opportunity in Inscription that told me that. And so I passed a lot of it off as prop work.
I
Outside of like, yeah, there's some really cool wall puzzles and there's some cool details and like the guy in the jar thing popped up again and a few other, and I've seen references throughout the the things that the game the big things that the game does
Mm-hmm.
without spoilers. And so I feel like I'm missing a lot of it,
Yeah,
or perhaps the transcendent
here
parts
I'm
of it.
curious if
here
there's a way
is
for you to tell us without spoilers where you are in Inscription. I
yeah.
think our audience
So,
might also be very curious about that as well.
right. So I am a good chunk of the way through the third phase.
Okay.
Oh,
The
really?
third phase is honestly was kind of where I stopped playing for a large portion of time just because it wasn't as gripping as the first two phases.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
For
But
me,
So you
honestly, the
are I'm still, let's see if I can approach this without spoilers as well.
mhm.
So
Yeah, this is the great
uh
art of this podcast that we've been anticipating for months.
oh boy, like I was under the impression that you were still at um Man, okay.
So phase 1 is the spooky card bit.
Mhm.
Phase 2 is the variety card bit,
Right.
and phase
Mhm.
3 is the other spooky but not quite as much blue card bit.
Yes, blue.
Yeah.
Blue is
So
good.
you are okay. So you have
Oh yeah,
okay.
I can
blue.
Okay.
stand up
Blue
in the
cards.
blue card bit.
That's
That's when I
okay.
quit.
I was under the impression you were still in the first phase. And
Oh
this
no,
actually
I rocketed through it.
this changes the way that I see your argument, because what I was about to say
And what we can talk about
is
potentially.
my fear is that people will play and will never get out, will never see this game for the things that it can bring. And I think the phases are one of the most impactful things that this game can bring. And
Mhm.
I now that I was about to say you're not I would understand where you're coming from, since you haven't seen phase 2 and you haven't seen how like the drastic changes that this game can make.
Mhm.
But now I see your argument for uh um as far more impactful, because even with those pieces, uh it didn't hit you quite like the way it did me.
Yeah, I wish
Because
Yeah.
it
I was
did,
very surprised.
And
right?
like
I
my thing
really
with the little wooden figures, I don't mean to be implying that there is more to experience than what you did experience. It might be that the curtains are blue kind of thing.
mm, yeah.
But yeah, actually I'm curious if there's a thing that I can say about the phase that you're at, because almost everyone who I've talked to about Inscription has stopped there for a while before coming back to it and finishing it, or has just stopped there.
Hmm.
Um I guess I'm just trying to figure out how much I can say.
Well, and I can just ask, right?
Yeah.
The ending is, I assume, better and or slash more meaningful slash ties it all together than phase 3. Yeah,
I would say so.
you would
Yeah.
say so. So one of the other things, and the reason I like the real reason that I'm sticking with Outer Wilds over Inscription on this one is I actually kind of disagree with the artistic choice made in phase 2
Sure.
with the
Gameplay or visual?
visual, the style
Mm.
Really?
change.
Okay.
I would have really liked that to have the wildly different like narrative and tone change while maintaining the perspective and aesthetic of phases 1 and 3.
Oh, I
Same. I
see.
actually felt that way the second that it happened, but I didn't like. I don't know. I didn't trust myself enough to like say that out loud, because I was like, well, I should like this thing, right? You know, gamers like this thing, so I should like
Mhm.
it.
It was just like phase 1 is so good at being immersive
I
and like
know.
Mhm.
I just miss
finding
phase one so much. I want to go back.
and God,
Yeah.
and finding
Yeah.
the thing at the end of phase 1 in the way that you do and using it the way that
Yes.
you do, dope. And then I click on the
Yes.
thing and it's a game TM, right? Like I go from
Sure.
immersive dope and it's interacting with the program in a way that's like, oh, the first phase 1 is this experience, and then oh yeah, you're actually in a program and it does that great juxtaposition, and then phase 2 is just it's a game. It's a game and it's a game.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
see
And
I
what you
think
mean.
Yeah, I
it
think we shouldn't go too much in detail, but I agree with
mhm.
you completely.
all right, I think I am going to say the thing that I had to say about the differences between phase 1 and phase 3, which I think is important to Inscription as an art piece.
Mhm.
Uh and I don't think it's a spoilery way of saying it, but phase 3 focuses on the mechanics of the card game and deliberately does away with a lot of the flavor text of Phase 1.
Mm.
But it brings you feel that, like you notice that it's not as scary. There isn't this life or death feeling while sitting at your computer. Or at least that was my experience. And
Yeah.
but they talk, or the game really puts an emphasis on how a game is more than just mechanics. It's more than just cards. It's the emotions and the feeling that a game, as more than any other piece of media, can make you feel.
Yeah, it is doing that intentionally and playing with it. You know, those feelings that you're feeling as a gamer right now are the point of the art, is they want you to feel that at that moment so they can contrast it later.
Yeah, I think especially with Phase 3, I think it's valuable to say that all of the gameplay choices are in order to tell this story. And one of the things I like the most about this game is how it plays with almost it places this pseudo developer in front of you and has that as a character. Uh, in Phase 3, you look at the motives and you start to understand parts about the other two phases. And I think through these changes that the game goes through, it tells a very unique story with it that is spooky, but also compelling. Um, and I've always wanted, a piece of media to really play with its marketing and its storytelling in this way, and I've never seen it pulled off. Nonetheless, well,
Sorry, Zeus, can we make that the name of this matchup? It's spooky, but also compelling.
yes, okay, you're right.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Spooky games.
Ooh,
Spook.
also, we should put Outer Wilds up on our screens here too.
That's right.
you're right. Thank you. Um, let me grab Outer Wilds again. I really appreciate these insights because I am reconsidering my vote. Especially because I would love to talk about Outer Wilds because I think it has some very solid parallels between the storytelling in that the best storytelling that we always talk about in video games are ones that you truly discover as a player. And the attachment that I have to some of the characters and to some of the events that I have experienced in, let me continue bringing this image up, in Outer Wilds, uh, I'm afraid maybe due to, um, they have the distinct possibility of recency bias, but also I have newfound trust in the ability for people to play this game ever since I've been introducing my friend to video games. And I think that it's a game that I can ask people to play in a way that I can't ask people to play Inscription quite as much.
Yeah,
It is more
so
approachable.
let me give a shot to the things that Mason says at every finals round. One of them is, Zeus, I made this to break your heart.
Yes.
You know, that's my gift to you as your friend. Is I have to choose between your heart and then your other more differenter heart. Uh, so that being said out of the way, I always vote for the game that made me cry. And Outer Wilds made me cry a lot for like deep humanity, like existential reasons. And Inscription made me very excited to be a gamer, and it made me really, feel smart and run around, telling everyone they have to play this game, they absolutely have to play this game. But so did Outer Wilds. And Outer Wilds did it for a better reason, in my experience and opinion and my belief. Is like Outer Wilds made me do this to be like, you will become a better, more rounded, like stable person if you play Outer Wilds. Whereas Inscription, it's like there's a lot of intrigue there, but there's also a lot of like damage and not necessarily like all the way healthy ideas. Like, I don't know, like Inscription had some parts of it that were not my favorite themes. Whereas Outer Wilds is just like wholesome and supportive and like positive and like made me really feel good about like myself and mind and like the future of science and the future of humanity and that everything was going to be okay and like reinforced lots of like just the more comforting aspects of Buddhist philosophy, I would say.
The sheer good feeling that you get out of seeing a supportive scientific community deal with problems is may swing my vote in its very core.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I haven't, once again, I have only played maybe 5 or 6 hours of Outer Wilds. And Inscription didn't make me cry, but it almost did, which is shocking to me. I
Yeah.
very much almost cried.
I always cried at Inscription
Yeah.
also.
But
There was a part of Inscription that did shake me, and the characters in this you do know more about by the end, and
Yeah.
you become attached to them.
I suppose I was more emotional than I expected I would be.
Yes.
But I really like that take of yours, Clever, about Outer Wilds being or was it Uzus? Outer Wilds being about a scientific community coming together around something and actually solving problems, which is kind of refreshing sometimes. Like I wish that I knew of another scientific community that could come together, or other kinds of
Yeah.
communities that could come together around the things happening in solar systems that lead to
s-
other things happening in solar systems.
Gee, I
A
wonder why.
super obvious common uniting problem.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, the psychology of that does sound really refreshing, and the music that it has in it, and music and emotion are very, very closely tied things. So
My God, and it's just so beautiful. Just sometimes I'd sit in places in this game and I'd look out and I'd marvel.
Honestly, I think the last thing that I want to say about both of these games is to reference something that Zeus you say when you don't like a game is when you can see the hand of the writer, right? You
Ah,
see the developer. And to me, when I played, like, to be fair, I loved Inscription until phase 2. Um,
wow.
when
Okay.
a lot of it turned into me seeing a developer on the other side of the screen going, huh? Isn't that cool? We did a thing, but you didn't expect that. And I was like, okay. And then Outer Wilds is just like I know conceptually there are a bunch of developers and writers
Of
that made
course.
that thing, but like a good DM, I'm right there with them. I want to hear the story they're telling, and I'm not even paying attention to the human on the other side of the screen,
yeah.
right? It hasn't
Yeah.
yanked me out. It hasn't done anything. It's just been like, you want to find this out, right? And I'm like, I sure as hell do. Good mystery, guys. Let's figure it out. Um,
I adore both of these games, and honestly, the biggest draw that I have right now in voting for Inscription is to plead with Jacob to finish, or with Sunless to finish it. It's really like
I plan on it. I absolutely plan on finishing it. I
with you saying that, I feel very comfortable with swinging my vote to Outer Wilds because I'm feeling the emotion and the beauty that I feel when I'm playing that game right now, and it just feels so wonderful. And it's seamless, it's beautiful, it's striking, and it's good.
What are our vote
Um,
counts at, actually?
uh, let's do another canvas. Sunless.
Outer Wilds.
Outer Wilds for me.
Okay. Shaunosaur.
Uh,
I know.
I mean, if we're not sure, we could continue arguing, because I can argue positive
mean-
for Inscription as well.
let me describe the fence that I'm sitting on.
Please.
Outer Wilds seems amazing and beautiful, and I want to play it and experience those things, but it's difficult for me to attest to them and to attest that how much I will cry with not having already cried.
Yeah.
And Inscription, it made me feel a wide range of emotions, from like actual fear for my life and like the possibly one of the best and most immersive and fun horror games I've ever played, to like joy at being like, oh, I'm actually gonna survive this. Haha, I've figured out your game, Mr. Man. To being like, oh, I'm actually like kind of sad at the end of this. Like, that's not an emotion I expected to
You could
feel
say
about this game.
it gave you lots of experiences
What?
I guess.
Wait, I
No.
explain
that-
that.
or stimulation.
Oh, I see.
Sorry,
No, it's a
it's a reference.
Oh,
uh,
okay, gotcha.
yes.
Had to
To a
be
wonderful
there.
character who is like my favorite.
Yeah.
But
I'm
Oh, that
guessing
guy.
a character that I thought I would, not like, and then
yeah.
ended up liking.
Yeah, and I guess like to mention the thing I mentioned a little while ago, this game reminds me of Undertale in a lot of ways. And Undertale is a game that did make me cry at several spots. And part of me is wondering if Inscription followed in those footsteps and like Sunless was saying, is pulls the curtain back maybe a little bit too much at certain spots and is like, aha, did you see the thing that I did? It was clever. And we're all like, yes, it was enjoyable. But it's still so good and I still love it very much. So that's my
Yeah.
fence.
Ah, man.
I mean, my argument for Inscription is that Inscription also makes you feel all those warm feelings. It's just at, the end. Like in the thing about Inscription's, like, I guess, story is it's that whole circle that you have to end, you have to finish it to get a lot of the stuff that the themes really make it clear at the end what the themes are. And if I talk about it anymore, I'll spoil it.
Yeah.
So like you just have to finish it. Like with both of these games, the only thing that we can say about them is you need to finish them, like all the way finish them. And that's why, my fear before this podcast was people not playing them or, having it be a partial thing. But I guess with Outer Wilds' new DLC, even our playthrough of Outer Wilds is now partial as well.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
no one has finished the whole thing of either of them.
One thing I want to mention with Outer Wilds is I have a deep concern of people playing Outer Wilds and encountering certain things at the non-optimal points for the story. Like there's an absolutely beautiful moment that with prior knowledge you can reach before the time is right. And there are a few of these in the game, and it stresses me out to think of people encountering those before the story really wants to tell it to them.
Hmm.
It's ripe for the correct and absolutely beautiful story points that I want to tell my friends about and talk to them about before you really are ready for them. And that's I think a point in its detriment is that um, I think that you can prime yourself to play the game in a way that won't be as fun, and that really stresses me out about a lot of games.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would call that actually a point in its favor in an indirect way,
Yeah,
because you can feel the freedom that Outer Wilds gives you. And if this game felt more on the rails, such that it locked off certain aspects of the game, it would feel more gamey to me, and it would feel less about genuine adventure and discovery and
yeah,
more about following the plot points, right?
sure,
You
yeah.
know,
Like the fact that it's natural, but there's like a route that follows from the information you've gathered, I think
yeah.
works better in the game, even if some people are going to sequence break.
Yeah, I
I
feel
know
like
which is rough, but
yeah. I feel like maybe honestly, knowing your take on that, that makes me feel almost like I've maybe been playing the game kind of wrong so far because I've been playing it with like when I explore a thing, sometimes I'm like, oh, well, I'm probably not ready to explore this yet. Maybe I need to go somewhere else first. Like
You've got
this
a
asteroid
point.
seems
Like
kind of hard to land on. Maybe I'm supposed to find this later. When maybe I should just be like, I'm gonna land on the hardest asteroid I possibly can.
that's a really good point. And like I think the game does a magnificent like when I first booted up the game, I already saw something that I was very curious about that I thought was very subtle, and that I thought that I was supposed to see only after like a great amount of time. And I acted on this, even though it was very difficult, and there were a lot of things in the game that kind of acted like I wasn't supposed to be doing that. And I was really concerned that I was going to reach the ending of the game by doing this, uh, and not experience this whole thing. And I think that I did see a part of the game, um, quite before I understood its meaning, but it in no way, uh, it really didn't affect my experience of the story at all, and maybe even grew it. Yeah,
Well,
I kind
here's
of take that back. They really do think these things through.
yeah, here's the thing
And
for
yeah,
against Outer Wilds is the the uncomfortable truth is I think that Outer Wilds, even though I'm voting for it, is doing less intellectual work overall from the creators than Inscription is. I think that Inscription is in some ways working harder than Outer Wilds is in a design sense, but Outer Wilds is just like wholesome and sweet and good in general. That I
mhm.
think that it's like it doesn't need those sense of reversals as much, even though it does have them, like all good puzzle games do. Um, but I think Inscription was like a more inspired project overall, than Outer Wilds ended up being. But Outer Wilds is just a solid idea in the first place.
Can we
speaking
stop calling Outer Wilds a puzzle game? Because I really disagree with that. Like I think that boxing it into this genre might give people a much different impression of the game than I think that anyone's experience really points towards. I think that I want to call it um,
You want to call it a
more of a,
mystery?
I would call it a discovery game,
Mm.
or perhaps
Interesting.
an exploration game,
Oh yeah,
because
exploration.
uh,
exploration, I
I
think.
I don't think that I thought about puzzles this entire time. The very implication of a puzzle is something being set before you and saying, this is something you will have to solve to get past me. And I never got that impression uh, in this game. The the sheer beauty of it is that you experience this in such a genuine way, and there is no abstraction of the world away from what it truly is. And the very beauty of the game is this discovery and this drive that you get to explore and I'm saying discover a lot, but
No, yeah, I
the
think that's a
term
really
really does drive it
insightful,
home.
sharp commentary because it isn't really a puzzle directly.
Yeah, you could call any game a puzzle
Yeah.
game.
It's all self-generated, and
and I
it's
think
very
that it's
discovery based.
yeah, I think that it is far too inapplicable to this game to really call it that.
Yeah, and I want to talk about sort of game design behind the scenes thing a little bit. Um, with regards to Outer Wilds and like inspiration, effort, all that stuff. The seamlessness of the Outer Wilds experience is as much or more like intellectually impressive as the twists and turns of Inscription.
Oh, I
Like
For
see.
sure.
So to
Inscription
make
has
it feel so subtle.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Inscription has a lot of obvious surface level work with its phases and its doodads and its what's its. But Outer Wilds' effort and like the beauty of it is evident in that you don't see any seams. It's it's a weld, it's a weld of two metal sheets, so perfect you can't see any cracks. Um
Yeah,
and you don't
like
even notice that they're welded anymore,
the best
right?
professionals make it look easy.
Exactly. It's someone saying walking into a room and pushing a button and charging $195 for it. It's like, well, I could have pushed that button. It's like, yeah, well, it's $194 to hire me to know what button to push and $1 to push the button. Uh, it's that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's invisible effort that like when you're judging games like this, you have to look for all the ways a game could have fucked up but didn't, and there you'll find your
Uh,
quality.
Yeah. I also feel like I I mean, I haven't played a whole lot of Outer Wilds, but I might be kind of coming from the same direction that you're coming from, Jacob, or Sunless, wow, with Inscription, which is my initial time playing Outer Wilds, I didn't have a controller, and so I was playing it with keyboard and mouse.
Mm.
And I couldn't walk straight, let alone pilot a ship through space. Like, I physically could not tell where I was going, like, felt dizzy to be walking on this planet. Um,
Mm.
so maybe that may have just affected my initial thoughts on it, but once I had a controller, then I was like, oh, well, this is great.
And the game
Yeah.
developers do have that hilarious screen at the beginning, which desperately pleads with you to play it with a controller only first.
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
Yeah.
this game is better. Just please don't give it up just because you're playing with a mouse and keyboard. Just get a controller, please.
It's a good
You
game.
can.
We
It's
promise.
a good
It
game.
was
Come
good.
on.
We made a good
Don't
game,
leave.
guys. Yeah.
And they
so
did.
so to talk about that, right? Inscription won Polygon's Besties or Game of the Year this year, right? But Outer
Mhm.
Wilds was mentioned not so much earlier on the list for its DLC, and it was cited as the game of the decade. So these
Oh.
are both very highly acclaimed games.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I really want to go play the DLC right now.
I know, but we should vote. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to vote
We should vote.
eventually,
We do.
and
Yeah.
it's been
Agreed.
3 hours, 3.5 hours.
Vote in a quick reason. Sunless, please.
Outer Wilds, for the reasons I've stated before, I think it is a
Wonderful.
more pure experience.
Okay. Shanosaur.
Hmm. I don't want to split my vote since there's 5 of us now. Um.
Should we come back?
No, I need to make up my
Okay.
mind.
That's
Uh,
fair.
I feel like I think I'm gonna vote for Outer Wilds because I'm very excited to see what more it has to offer. I'm
I
excited
know
to
you'll
see
enjoy
what
it.
everyone's talking about it, and my heart vote is still Inscription,
Then
but
you should vote Inscription.
Oh, your heart
Yeah,
vote.
we're not in a balanced tie, so whatever happens
Yeah.
will be a deciding
yeah,
factor.
but we're voting for the best game of the year.
It's true,
So
but if your heart votes for Inscription, if it was your best game of this year, that's the other vote is you yourself. Like, what is your best game of the year?
well, in that case, I haven't played enough of Outer Wilds. In fact,
Exactly.
I don't think I started playing it until after January 1st. But I don't know if that's a good way to be voting.
Oh,
I think it's a fair way to be voting, considering we won't tie either way.
Yeah.
I am so tempted to put down your heart vote simply because you said it was your heart vote. Can I do that?
Yes, okay.
I am very happy that that's your heart vote.
Mine is Outer
Um,
Wilds because it makes you a better person, and I like the themes more, and it just like it made me cry like in a deep like humanity core way. It's also like Outer Wilds is good on a like spiritual level, which is great.
yeah.
Hmm.
What about you, Carbon Speed Dating?
I think my vote is gonna have to go for Inscription. I am incredibly looking forward to Outer Wilds, but most of what I've experienced is secondhand excitement and a couple of really beautiful music pieces I've seen. So I'm very excited about it. But if we're talking about personal games, personally, it would have to be Inscription. I really enjoyed my time with it. Really solid game. I'm very excited to see what Outer Wilds will open up for me when I start to play it. But me, for now, it's going to be Inscription.
Yeah. Oh no.
Have
See, now
fun.
you're in the same spot I was last time.
It's
And
gone back to the stress that I got from the start of the round.
Yes,
No.
good,
Carbon Speed
Anakin,
Dating
very
votes for
good.
Inscription to give Will more pain.
And see, it's
Yes,
all
it
one
is.
big beautiful plan to make Will the most stressed out he's ever been in a public sphere.
This is our
And
Inscription
the winner
now.
is Death Strand. No.
Death Stranding, everybody. Everything
So
that has
I
transpired
care
has
about
been
both of
so
these games
stupid.
very much. I have so much more to see from Inscription. And Shaunasaur even just told me about something hours earlier that completely changes my view of Inscription to a degree that I didn't expect. Outer Wilds is a piece of art, and just from I knew that it was going to be pretty good, and I had a much different outlook on it uh, from uh, from how it ended up really looking for me. Let me rephrase that. When I judged a book by its cover, I did not think Outer Wilds was going to hit me the same way that it did, and it really brought home just one of the most lovely games that I've ever played. Um, uh,
Use your advice for me and go with your heart fit.
Yeah. But also remember when Inscription made you like run around the house like up and down 3 times because of how crazy it was? And then asked you
yeah.
those questions about your computer?
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Can I share something about Outer Wilds I didn't mention?
Yeah, please.
So, uh, those of you, those of you here may know that I enjoy undertaking uh, difficult gaming challenges for fun, and I know there's one in Outer Wilds, but the game's so good I kind of don't want to do it. Like I was trying to do the thing, I was trying to accomplish the accomplishment,
Yeah.
and the whole time I was like, I actually kind of want to just be playing the game normally.
Hell
Like,
yeah.
I don't even want to be like, I want to do the hard thing because I said I was going to do the hard thing and because it's hard and I want to do it. But like, kind of want to play the game more, you know?
That makes me so happy to hear, and I'm voting Outer Wilds because of it. Yeah, Outer Wilds has a more cohesive, just this your seamless comment really hit me. And though I love both of these games dearly, and even though I still, with the stipulation that you will someday finish Inscription, because boy, I'd love to talk with you about it. I am voting Outer Wilds as
Yeah.
our game of the year
Outer Wilds
2021.
is
Nice.
the spiciest
Nice.
salsa.
Congratulations. Outer
Wow.
Wilds is the spiciest salsa that we have experienced in 2021. Submit
Yeah.
scores.
Million Scovilles.
All right.
Yes.
Well, that's great. All
Yeah.
right, guys.
We done.
I'm very, very happy that we did this yet another year, and I am truly looking forward to doing it again at the end of this year.
Yeah, we'll have
Thank
to
you
keep our
all.
eye out.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you all
Looking
so
forward
much
to
for including me in this. I've really, really had a lot of fun with this. This was very fun.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
obviously. I
Yeah.
mean, we appreciate you being here, offering the insights you have.
Mm-hmm.
And looking
Also,
forward to next year's insights too.
big
Yes.
thank you
So,
to Carbon
are
Speed
some-
Dating for joining for the first time ever.
Yeah, there are some exciting games coming out this year. So I mean,
oh
even just
my
next month.
God.
So it'll be a pretty.
Yeah,
Being in
we're
jest?
gonna have some spicy
Yeah.
salsa for
Yeah,
next year.
Elden Ring. I want you to take Elden Ring as a story game, Carbon Speed Dating.
Yeah.
You'd be like,
just-
I really
oh,
like
God.
story games, so I'm bringing
Yeah.
Elden Ring.
I bring Elden Ring because classic, easy to
Yeah.
tell stories, right?
Classic
Yeah.
choose your own adventure story game for me.
Well, because we have Elden Ring and the Monster Hunter Rise expansion this
Yeah.
year. Like,
Also,
And
Breath of the
Horizon,
Wild
We-
the
too.
new Horizon.
Oh my
And
god, is
Horizon
Breath of the Wild
Forbidden
2
West.
coming out?
It's
and
supposed
God
to.
of War and Breath of the Wild
My
sequel.
gosh.
Oh my,
Mhm.
okay, I'm sorry. We're gonna all have to play Breath of the Wild multiple times and
Ah,
Elden
yeah.
Ring at the same time.
And the
Legend
Steam
of
Deck.
Zelda, Elden Ring.
Can we look forward to
Legend
our
of
game of the
Zelda,
decade
Elden Ring.
game of the decade discussion too? Because we've got, Monster Hunter, one of the largest game franchises, versus, Outer Wilds. Oh my lord. Boy, this is going to be an exciting decade.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
All
not
right.
just because of the world's happenings.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in for the longest. If you've made it this far, truly, truly, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I will
Congratulations on
see you
making it.
guys later. In the interest of time, stick around the channel and feel free to check out Sonosaurus's art, Zeus's very good streams and videos that are now getting a massive increase in their scope as he progresses through his graduate career. Be sure to
Thank
play
you.
the video games that are created by Sunless, the Pokemon video games, and the delightful story games created by Carbon Speed Dating, which we shall link in the description of the YouTube video. All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.